My name is Jennifer, and I'm 32 years old. I work in a professional job, and my husband, Donnie, is 30. We got married 2 years ago. Donnie can seem a bit unreliable, but he's a kind person and is good at handling housework. I'm focused on my career and enjoy the work I do. I work in the New York area, where hard work is recognized. However, the company may ask me to move to different locations, and there's no maternity leave or support for parents. Many women leave the company when they get married or have kids. At first, I didn't want to get married or have children because I preferred my job over housework. When Donnie proposed, I turned him down because I liked my job. I was already a section chief and wanted to climb higher in my career. I didn't think about settling down or having kids, but Donnie understood and promised we would share the housework and not have kids for a while. Eventually, I agreed to marry him because of his patience and understanding. Now that we are married, we both work. Sometimes we don't split chores exactly as planned, but we help each other, and it works out well. My in-laws sometimes make annoying comments, like asking if I'll prioritize my home or have kids, but it's not a big problem because Donnie always supports me. Living with Donnie has been great, and I've learned to appreciate married life. Then, one day, my supervisor, the department manager, called me about a possible transfer to a new office. He said the new office was a regional branch, and I would return to headquarters in 2 years. If I did well, I could be promoted to section chief at the new location, and even become the first female department head when I returned. It was a good opportunity. In my company, everyone who becomes a department manager or higher has had to go through a transfer. If you refuse a transfer, you could stay as a section chief or even be moved to an unimportant position. Before I got married, I would have accepted the transfer offer without thinking twice, but now, as a married woman, I felt unsure. I told my department manager, "Thank you for considering me. I'd like to think about it positively, but since it involves moving, I'd like to talk to my husband first. Can I get back to you after that?" He understood and said, "Right, you're married. You can decide whether to go alone or move with your family. Discuss it and let me know." I'm hoping for a positive answer. When I got home, I talked to Donnie about the offer. I explained, "I've been offered a transfer. I might have to move to the countryside, but if I do well for 2 years, I can return here and get promoted. I want to accept the offer, but I need to know if you're okay with it. We can either move together, or I can go alone. What do you think?" Donnie seemed surprised at first, but after thinking for a moment, he said, "If you accept this transfer, your dream could come true, right? I can't move with you because of my job here, but don't worry about me, go for it." With Donnie's support, I told my company that I would go alone for the transfer. I started negotiating the terms, and the company agreed to cover my moving expenses. They also agreed to treat me as on duty when commuting back home from my new location, and they offered a good benefits package. With all these conditions, I decided to accept the transfer to the branch office. I officially received the transfer order and made plans to move to the countryside. I could rent a company apartment for a low price, so I decided to live there. On the day of the move, the movers had already taken my things, and Donnie came to see me off at the station. "Thanks for seeing me off," Donnie said. "I'll keep in touch regularly, and I'll try to visit as often as I can." "Yeah, I'll be waiting. Just don't overwork yourself since you're working remotely," I replied. "You too, take care," Donnie said as I left. And so, my life as a remote employee began. I planned to visit home during long holidays and slower weeks, but things at the branch office didn't go as expected. Right after I transferred, trouble started. Some employees didn't trust me just because I was a woman, and they wouldn't acknowledge me. I became the target of rumors, and my instructions were ignored. My phone calls weren't even transferred. Then, a serious mistake happened in a project a subordinate was handling, and they deliberately kept me out of it. The subordinate was shocked, and since I was their supervisor, it was my responsibility to fix it. I had to deal with the problem, apologize, recover the lost work, and improve relationships with the team. My supervisor saw I was overwhelmed and gave me some advice. He said, "I understand your struggle, because I've been through a transfer myself. It might feel unfair, but you can't just force people to see things your way. It's important to communicate well, understand others, and build connections with them." Taking my supervisor's advice, I worked on connecting with the people at the branch. I spent more time with them and joined the neighborhood association, which was part of the company's rental housing community. Soon, I found it hard to find personal time for myself, and I couldn't make it home to be with Donnie. I kept in touch with him, but after a few months of working remotely, It became harder to reach him by phone or text at night. I'm working late every day because work is tough, Donnie said. I was exhausted and often fell asleep early because of how busy I was. I didn't suspect anything and focused on my work. One time, during a long holiday when things were slow, I decided to visit home in New York. However, I couldn't reach Donnie by phone or text, so I went back to New York without telling him. When I opened the door to my house, something felt off. Then a woman I didn't recognize rushed to the door and said, "Oh, welcome back. If I knew you were coming early, I would have prepared." Both of us were shocked, and there was an awkward silence. The woman spoke first, asking, "Who are you?" I replied, "Who are you? This is my home. There must be a mistake. I live here." We argued, and then decided to step outside to check the house number. To my surprise, the nameplate on the door was the custom one I had ordered. The key still fit, so I said, "This is my house, I'm going in." The woman protested, but I ignored her and went inside. Once inside, I saw everything had changed. The curtains, furniture, and even the decorations were different. There was a framed photo of Donnie and the woman at a theme park in the living room. I saw mugs I'd never seen before in the kitchen, and in the bathroom, there were unfamiliar toothbrushes, skin products, and women's shampoo. The bed linens were new, and there were no traces of my things left in the wardrobe, only the woman's clothes. Donnie's things were hidden in a back room, like the woman had moved in and taken over. I was still in shock when I heard the front door open. "Hi, I'm home," Donnie said. "Lola, did you invite a friend over?" Seeing him, I was stunned. "Justin?" I asked. "Since when did you become Justin? Can you explain what's going on?" Donnie looked shocked and said, "What are you doing here?" I confronted him, asking, "What's going on? Why are you calling yourself Justin?" He hesitated, and then said, "Well, this man's real name is Donnie, and I'm Donnie's wife, Jennifer." The woman, Lola, interrupted, saying, "That's a lie. He told me he was divorced." Donnie then explained, "Well, Jennifer, when you didn't come home, I was lonely, so I casually signed up for a dating app and met Lola." I was confused. "So, Justin is your fake name on the dating app?" Donnie replied, "No, it's not that. I thought using my real name would cause problems, so I used a fake name but kept my last name the same." I asked, "And why did Lola lie about being divorced?" Lola replied, "On my dating profile, I said I had only ever gone to all-girls schools and never dated a man before. I was looking for someone serious about a relationship and marriage." I felt hurt by what Donnie said, so I lied about being divorced to Lola, and we started living together. "Why would you do that?" I asked. Donnie then tried to justify his actions. "It's your fault for always being away for work. It's natural for a man to want a woman. We've been living separate lives because of your job and all the overtime. I just wanted a warm home, with dinner ready when I came home." I was shocked by his confession. I had always thought he was understanding of my work, but this didn't make his actions right. "That doesn't excuse what you did," I told him. "What you did is horrible. If you wanted to be with someone else, you should have divorced me first. Why didn't you do the right thing?" Donnie replied, "I loved you both. I never planned on leaving either of you." I was furious. "After everything you've done, it's obvious I would find out when I came back. It's unbelievable you thought you could hide this from me." He tried to blame me. "It's your fault for breaking your promise and not coming back. If you just came home, I never would have cheated." Our argument turned into a shouting match, and the woman Donnie had been seeing stood there, pale, realizing she'd been tricked by a married man. The other woman finally realized she had been lied to, and said, "So it was all a lie? You made a fool of me. I'm leaving right now." Lola tried to leave, but Donnie tried to stop her. "Wait, it's not what you think," he said, but she pushed him away, saying, "Don't touch me with your filthy hands. I can't believe a word you say," and left for her parents' house. After everything that happened, I decided to get back at Donnie by gathering as much evidence as I could. Once I returned to my work assignment, I hired a private detective to look into Donnie's mistress. The detective found out that she was the daughter of an executive at one of Donnie's business partners. I had a lawyer send proof of the affair to both Donnie's family and the other woman's parents. When Donnie's family got the documents, he protested, saying he didn't want a divorce. I prepared myself for a long fight, even considering taking the case to court. The other woman's family contacted my lawyer, and we agreed to meet at their office. The other woman and her parents showed up and apologized to me, saying, "We're so sorry, even though we didn't know about it. Our daughter caused you so much trouble." The other woman and her parents explained that their daughter was very sheltered and naive. She had always dreamed of a more free and romantic love, so when she met my husband on a dating app, she didn't realize who he really was. She thought he was divorced and wanted to move in with him. Despite their warnings, she didn't listen and ran away from home to be with him. The other woman was devastated when she realized she had been the other woman in an affair and blamed herself. She was now seeing a therapist to cope. Her parents offered me a settlement of $50,000 and asked me to keep the matter private. I told them I would accept their apology on one condition: I was preparing for a divorce, but Donnie refused to agree to it. If they were willing to testify if the case went to trial, I would accept the settlement. They agreed to cooperate but didn't want a permanent record of this affair, so they asked if there was any other way to help punish Donnie. I realized that Donnie's workplace was a client of the other woman's family, and we decided to work together to teach him a lesson. His workplace would soon face issues because he had angered a powerful executive at one of their client companies. This would all be blamed on Donnie. Meanwhile, Donnie's parents, unaware of the situation, were trying to contact him, worried about why I wasn't answering their calls. They blamed me for not being home, saying I was too focused on my job. When Donnie confessed to them that he had cheated, his mother sided with him, blaming me for neglecting him. Donnie's parents kept calling and even showed up at my workplace, creating a scene. They told me to let Donnie go and stop standing in the way of his happiness with his lover. I told them I wanted a divorce, but Donnie was refusing. I also mentioned that the woman he had an affair with didn't want him back. When Donnie's parents realized their son had angered a major client, they quickly changed sides. They apologized to me, but I refused to forgive them. I told them to leave, and when they didn't, I had them escorted out by security. My company decided to sue Donnie's parents for business obstruction because of the scene they caused. After all that, I finally received my compensation from Donnie and got my divorce. The other woman's family also demanded compensation for the harm to their daughter's reputation and her therapy costs. With all the losses and debts from his mistakes, Donnie was struggling financially and couldn't quit his job. 2 years had passed since my assignment started. By the time everything was settled, I had successfully completed my assignment and was preparing to return to the main office. My hard work had paid off, and I had been promoted to department manager. If I hadn't taken that assignment, I might still be stuck in a loveless marriage. But I realized that someone like Donnie would have had an affair sooner or later, and I would have always clashed with his parents. Now, I've realized that I am better suited for work than family life, and I am incredibly fulfilled and happy.
My husband's estate, valued at $80 million along with this house, will be inherited by me as we have no children. My sister-in-law's demeanor is always a challenge to contend with. My name is Emma, a 45-year-old who works part-time. My husband and I are blessed with 2 sons, one a senior and the other a sophomore in high school. The elder one is currently preparing for his college entrance exams, aspiring to follow his passion for law. His ambition was ignited at a tender age, likely influenced by my brother Oliver, who is a seasoned lawyer. A few years back, Oliver established his own law firm, which my eldest son admires greatly. From his early years, my son demonstrated a knack for academic excellence, a trait that Oliver wholeheartedly encouraged upon learning of his nephew's aspirations. Whenever they meet, my son reaffirms his goal to emulate his uncle's legal career, to which Oliver responds with a warm chuckle, urging him to swiftly pursue his dreams and walk in his footsteps. When my brother, who was married but childless, came to visit, he delighted in playing with my sons and showering them with affection. His wife, a woman a decade his junior, kept her distance from our family, rarely gracing our home with her presence. As a result, our interactions with her were few and far between. My brother and I endured the loss of our parents at a young age, leading him to step into a parental role when I was on the brink of marriage. Soon after my wedding, he followed suit and tied the knot himself. My husband and I felt reassured when we learned of my brother's intention to marry a younger woman. However, upon meeting his fiancée, I was taken aback by her perpetually sullen demeanor. We had anticipated joyous exchanges, considering she was about to marry into our family, yet her expression remained persistently glum as she regarded us. In the presence of my brother and his fiancée, I offered a superficial compliment, saying, "You two make a great pair." Yet my true sentiments emerge only in the quiet moments at home with my husband. I couldn't shake off the curiosity about why she seemed so discontented. As their marriage was sealed, my husband echoed my concerns, remarking with a hint of worry she didn't seem particularly joyful as a bride. It's a bit concerning, isn't it? Shortly before their wedding, my brother tied the knot with his 10 years younger fiancée. To celebrate my husband, our children, and I paid them a visit at their newly acquired house. The grandeur of the place left me in awe, a testament to my brother's success as a law firm owner. However, the absence of my sister-in-law raised eyebrows. In jest, my husband quipped to my brother, "Has your wife already abandoned ship?" Though meant in good humor, the tension in my brother's reaction left us both uneasy. According to him, whenever there's trouble, his wife retreats to her parents' home. Today, she stayed over to celebrate her mother's birthday. My husband's expression drooped, perhaps regretting his attempt at humor. Then, out of the blue, my brother posed a serious question with a poker face. "If I were ever unable to have children, would you consider letting me adopt one of yours?" I initially brushed it off as a jest, but my brother's earnest demeanor suggested otherwise. Stunned by the unexpected proposal, I found myself unable to respond, while my husband, with a chuckle, replied, "Who knows what the future holds? Let's cross that bridge when we come to it. If you're serious, and if our children are comfortable with it, we can discuss it then." Though my husband seemed to take it lightly, I couldn't shake off the underlying concerns about both the adoption suggestion and the strained relationship between my brother and his wife. It wasn't my place to interfere in their marital issues, but I couldn't help but worry. Subsequently, whether it was our visits to my brother's home or his visits to ours, he always came alone. His wife was conspicuously absent, further fueling my apprehensions. My brother never brought up his wife, so I refrained from prying into their relationship. After over a decade of marriage, her presence faded into obscurity in my mind. This year, as my eldest son's acceptance into his dream law school was celebrated at our house, my brother broached the topic of adoption once again. "Just as I mentioned before, would you consider allowing me to adopt one of your children?" he inquired. Their inability to conceive led him to revisit the idea. The last time we discussed it, they were newlyweds, so there was no urgency. Yet this time, my brother's tone conveyed seriousness. Despite the weight of the proposal, my husband's response was swift and nonchalant. "Would you prefer our eldest son, considering his ambition to become a lawyer?" he quipped. While my husband's manner seemed casual, I remained cautious, mindful of the profound impact such a decision would have on our sons' lives. Even though my brother, their uncle, would be adopting them, I couldn't shake the worry about my sister-in-law's potential treatment of my sons, who wouldn't be her own flesh and blood. Seeking reassurance, I cautiously asked my brother, "Is your wife on board with the adoption?" His response, accompanied by a wry smile, was somewhat comforting. "Don't fret over her. We've discussed it already," he assured me. While I felt relieved knowing they had addressed the matter, I couldn't reach a decision immediately. Instead, I resolved to involve my sons in the discussion and let them weigh in, considering they were already in high school and capable of making their own choices. We left the matter unresolved that day, but a few days later, I received an urgent call from my brother's lawyer's office. They informed me that he had collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. Frantically, I made my way there, only to find the law firm staff anxiously awaiting news. It appeared my brother had suffered a stroke at work and was now unconscious. Once I arrived, the law firm staff departed, leaving me to confront the worrying situation alone. The law firm staff also mentioned they couldn't reach my sister-in-law. I tried calling the landline, but received no answer, and I didn't have her cell phone number. Eventually, my husband and younger son arrived, but still there was no luck reaching her. It was my younger son who stumbled upon a smartphone amidst my brother's belongings. With some effort, we managed to unlock it and began searching for her contact details. When she finally picked up the call from that phone, her response was laced with anger. "I warned you not to call again. I'll take legal action," she snapped. Attempting to convey urgency amidst her tirade, I interjected, "It's Emma, Oliver's sister. My brother has collapsed and is in the hospital." Her tone softened upon realizing it was me on the line. "Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I mistook you for Oliver. You said he collapsed?" she inquired. After updating her on my brother's condition and the hospital he was admitted to, her response took a surprisingly casual turn. "I'm unable to come to the hospital right now due to prior commitments. Please keep me informed," she requested before abruptly ending the call. I couldn't help but wonder if my sister-in-law had more pressing matters to attend to, especially considering her husband's illness. With the realization that she wouldn't be of any assistance, we resolved to care for my brother ourselves. Since my eldest son had completed his university entrance exams and was spending most of his time at home, he took on the responsibility of visiting my brother daily on my behalf. Despite our efforts, my brother remained unconscious and in critical condition. However, my sister-in-law never reached out or made an appearance at the hospital. Nearly a week after my brother was admitted, I made another attempt to contact her. This time she answered the phone promptly, her tone oddly cheerful. "What's the matter? Is he dead?" she exclaimed, lacking any semblance of empathy. Struggling to contain my anger, I responded calmly, "He's still alive. Why haven't you visited him at the hospital?" Her response, dripping with indifference, only fueled my frustration. "I'm neither a doctor nor a miracle worker. There's nothing I can do for his recovery," she retorted dismissively. Her callous demeanor pushed me over the edge and I hung up the phone, unable to suppress my growing rage. Suspicions began to brew within me regarding my brother's motives for wanting to adopt one of my sons. It dawned on me that perhaps he had resigned himself to the idea of not having children with his wife, indicating possible discord in their marriage. Curiosity led me to inquire about how they met after their marriage was finalized, to which my brother revealed they had been introduced through a marriage counseling agency. The revelation stirred a mix of emotions within me, especially the notion that my sister-in-law may have married my brother solely for the security of his profession as a lawyer and the promise of a comfortable life. This thought fueled my indignation further, but when I confided in my husband, his response cut deeper. If Oliver were to pass away in his current state, his wife would inherit the entire estate given their lack of children, he remarked callously. As my brother joined us to celebrate my eldest son's recent achievements and broach the topic of adoption, I couldn't shake the suspicion that perhaps his interest stemmed from considerations of inheritance rather than genuine familial intentions. I wish I could have reached a decision then and there, but the situation left me feeling powerless. After my brother's departure that day, I casually broached the topic with my two sons. To my surprise, my younger son expressed eagerness to be adopted, viewing it as a ticket to an easier life under Oliver's wing. Unlike his older brother, he seemed content to go with the flow, lacking clear aspirations for the future. I had anticipated my eldest son, who admired his brother, to follow suit, but his response caught me off guard. "I don't want to be adopted," he declared firmly. "As the eldest, it's my responsibility to take care of you, Mom, and Dad." His words filled me with pride, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that my eldest son, with his ambition to become a lawyer, was the more suitable candidate for adoption. Although I longed to initiate the adoption process on behalf of my unconscious brother, the circumstances thwarted my efforts. Despite my reluctance to claim any share of my brother's inheritance, I couldn't bear the thought of a single penny falling into the hands of my sister-in-law, who seemed to be eagerly awaiting his demise. I could only hold on to the hope of my brother's recovery, but it never came to fruition. Days later, he passed away, leaving me with the solemn duty of informing my sister-in-law. "My brother has passed away. Can we arrange a funeral?" I conveyed the somber news. To my surprise, her response was oddly cheerful. "You have the final say. Just please don't involve me in any formalities," she replied before abruptly ending the call. Feeling a surge of frustration, I held back my emotions as my husband and I took charge of planning the funeral. With assistance from the law firm's staff, we navigated through the arrangements. While my husband expressed concerns about the firm's future, my brother had already ensured its stability by entrusting its management to a capable individual. Thus, the firm would continue to operate seamlessly as a corporation. At the funeral, the turnout was overwhelming, with countless wreaths brought in to pay respects. The hall overflowed with mourners, a testament to the profound impact my brother had on so many lives. As the funeral unfolded, I found myself once again marveling at the incredible person my brother had been. Alongside me, my son lent a hand in the somber proceedings. However, his mood darkened upon witnessing the notable figures in attendance, presidents of major corporations, politicians, and other dignitaries. "I should have been the one adopted," he lamented bitterly. "I never realized how remarkable he truly was." My husband and I empathized with his sorrow, understanding the weight of his realization. As I fulfilled my role as a pallbearer, no one questioned the absence of my sister-in-law, nor was it brought up in conversation. I couldn't help but wonder if we were the only ones privy to the knowledge of my brother's marriage. They hadn't had a wedding ceremony, instead they simply embarked on a honeymoon. It dawned on me that even our relatives might have been unaware of their marital status. Reflecting on the situation, I couldn't help but harbor regrets. If only they hadn't married, there wouldn't be a need for a wife who failed to show up at her husband's funeral, and I lamented not allowing my brother to adopt my younger son sooner, fearing that she might seize control of my brother's estate with the support of the law firm's staff. The funeral for my brother had concluded, and I extended invitations for everyone to gather at his house for a meal, expressing my gratitude. "Thanks to all of you, my brother will be able to rest in peace," I said, my voice laden with sorrow. As we mourned together, my sister-in-law made a sudden appearance, clad in a flashy pink coat, as if timed to coincide with the conclusion of the funeral. Addressing her with a mix of surprise and suspicion, I asked, "Why have you chosen this moment to come?" With a wide grin on her face, she spoke loudly for all to hear. "As my husband's wife, I inherit his estate, valued at $80 million, along with this house. With no children in the picture, everything belongs to me." Her triumphant declaration prompted laughter from my brother's colleagues, leaving us puzzled by their reaction. My sister-in-law shot them a glare and scolded, "What's so funny? How rude." Her smirk quickly faded when one of the lawyers interjected, "We're aware that you're officially divorced." The revelation hit me like a thunderbolt. "You were divorced?" I exclaimed incredulously upon hearing the news the day before my brother's collapse. Glancing at my sister-in-law's visage, I saw a chilling expression etched across her features as she locked eyes with the individuals who had unveiled the truth. As she gritted her teeth, another lawyer interjected, "I've also heard that you were ordered to pay alimony due to the affair that led to the divorce. It's unavoidable." Furious, my sister-in-law directed her glare at the lawyer who spoke, snapping, "I'm not obligated to pay alimony anymore. There's no one left to pay." Her words dripped with disdain, but she was swiftly rebutted by the legal expert. "The right to alimony also transfers upon inheritance, so you'll still owe it to Emma, the sole inheritor." It dawned on me for the first time that I was the sole inheritor of my brother's estate. With their divorce finalized and our parents no longer alive, I was left as the last remaining family member. She seemed to grasp the reality of the situation, her expression morphing into one of horror as she locked eyes with me, prompting me to instinctively step back. Yet her demeanor remained defiant as she resumed her tirade. "Don't I deserve half of the estate now that the divorce is settled?" A lawyer, looking dismayed, interjected, "Didn't Oliver provide you with funds upon the finalization of the divorce?" "I have the receipt certificate." Another lawyer chimed in, "He also acquired a house prior to the marriage, so it isn't subject to property division." I found a sense of satisfaction in witnessing her being lectured by the lawyers. Despite her protestations, she appeared to recall something and chuckled lightly as she continued, "There's still the life insurance. I should be the beneficiary." Her resilience impressed me, navigating through a hostile environment where everyone seemed to be against her. Then, with a smirk, she added, "I changed the beneficiary of Oliver's life insurance to myself." However, the lawyer promptly refuted her claim regarding the life insurance, stating, "Oliver was a resolute individual, so it's likely he made the change upon finalizing the divorce." As I sifted through my brother's belongings, I stumbled upon the life insurance policy, but my sister-in-law caught sight of it. Swiftly, she snatched the document from my grasp, her impatience evident as she scrutinized the beneficiary. However, her demeanor shifted to one of disappointment as she handed the certificate back to me, her shoulders slumping in defeat. It was then that I noticed the beneficiary was me. Realizing her efforts were futile, my sister-in-law blurted out her true sentiments without filter. "I married a lawyer because I thought he was wealthy. But all I got was a pittance, and now I have to pay alimony. It's a colossal mistake." In response, the lawyer's expression hardened as he retorted. Oliver expressed similar sentiments. He regretted seeking the counsel of a marriage counselor, lamenting the monumental mistake he had made. Although my brother never confided such sentiments to me, his honesty was well known among his colleagues and subordinates. Faced with undeniable facts, my sister-in-law turned on her heel and departed from my brother's house. As time passed, she found herself obligated to pay alimony in installments, despite lacking stable employment. Desperate to fulfill her financial obligations, she hastily sought out employment opportunities. However, her lack of commitment led to a string of short-lived jobs. In a desperate attempt to secure quick wealth, she returned to the marriage counseling agency and set her sights on a wealthy individual. Deceiving him with promises of financial gain through marriage, she exploited his trust and attempted to swindle him. Yet, her scheme unraveled swiftly when the man saw through her deceit and reported her to the authorities. Subsequently, she was arrested for marriage fraud, facing the consequences of her actions. According to a lawyer from my brother's law firm who disclosed the truth, no alimony was ever paid to me. When I consulted the lawyer regarding the situation, I was informed of the recent developments. It was in May when the lawyer relayed the news that my sister-in-law had been apprehended. With her arrest, the likelihood of receiving alimony payments seemed slim in the foreseeable future. However, alimony wasn't my foremost concern. What I truly desired was to witness her facing the consequences of her actions and enduring a fate befitting her deeds. I firmly believe my brother would concur, which is why I wish for thorough police investigation into her other transgressions. I hope she's charged as a felon and brought to justice in court. Meanwhile, my family relocated to a house left behind by my brother, unexpectedly inheriting his property. My husband and sons were overjoyed at the prospect of moving into a spacious house, a stark contrast to our previous cramped apartment. Amidst the excitement, my eldest son, fueled by newfound determination, immersed himself in his law studies. Observing the interactions between his brother's colleagues and subordinates, he felt a strong yearning to pursue a career in law. Though never formally adopted by my brother, I hold on to the hope that he will carry forth my brother's legacy and excel as a lawyer, just as he aspired to be. However, my younger son harbored a sense of disappointment upon learning that I had inherited my brother's entire estate. "I wish I had been adopted by uncle so I could have inherited everything," he confessed candidly. Despite his words carrying a hint of jest, his smile betrayed a hint of genuine longing.
I just had a baby. I expect a $5,000 baby shower gift from you. This outrageous message came from Jessica, the detestable being who stole Michael from me. She had lied about being pregnant to steal him away, leading to our divorce. Even though I tried to forget that day since remarrying, her presence still disrupts my peace. She hasn't changed, still stirring up trouble without a care. I can hardly believe she's my real sister. But now that this message has arrived and been seen by John, ignoring it isn't an option. Reluctantly, I agreed to attend the celebration since John suggested we go. John seems to have a plan. He's a warm and kind person, but hates dishonesty. He's smart and skilled at turning work situations to his advantage. So I trust he has a strategy in mind. She can laugh about it now, but soon she'll have to face the music for all her wrongdoings. Anail me, John Johnson. I've been working as an office assistant in a local company since I graduated from college. I've been dating someone since my college days. Back then, through our club activities, I met Michael Smith, a medical student at the same university. His dad is a renowned allergy specialist, so it seems Michael is aiming to become a doctor too. His father's clinic is super popular, with patients from all over the country seeking treatment there. Being the only son of a solo practitioner and heir to a well-known clinic, my first impression was that he was a smart, well-off guy. But that was just my bias. Apparently, talking to him, I found he was quite unique, and we both liked the same film director's work. I wanted to get to know him better, so I made the first move. "Hey, have you seen the new movie by that director? If not, want to go see it together?" A woman who likes those films. That's a bit surprising. Absolutely. Really, I don't have many fans in my circle. I'm so glad I can watch it with you. My efforts paid off, and he began to see me as someone special. Our relationship continued not just through college but afterwards too, and Michael proposed to me when I was 25. I'm still learning to be a doctor, but in the future, I want to take over my dad's clinic and be a great doctor. I want you, Naomi, to be there to see it all. Will you marry me? Of course, I'd be delighted. Let's have a happy life together. I was on top of the world, pregnant right after getting married. Michael would definitely be a great dad, boy or girl. As long as the baby was healthy, that was all that mattered. Michael was probably just as excited for the birth, but then my happiness shattered. I suffered from severe morning sickness, constantly battling nausea and feeling unwell. I couldn't keep up with my job post-college and had to resign. Fighting my morning sickness at home, I had eating morning sickness, needing to constantly eat to stave off the nausea, surrounded by empty pastry bags where I always sat. I'm home, Naomi. What's happened to this place? It's a mess with all these snacks and bread bags. Sorry, I've been too sick to clean up. You're not working, and you've put on so much weight. It's hard without eating. I was always eating because of my morning sickness. Despite being early in my pregnancy, I had gained 22 lbs compared to before, not doing housework and just eating. You're like a pig who's given up on being late. That's harsh. He laughed mockingly at me, someone who could barely move during her morning sickness. I couldn't believe he could be so cruel. Was my judgment that off? Maybe once the baby was born, Michael would return to his kind self. I held on to that faint hope, but it too would soon crumble. One day, my sister Jessica came to visit. Oh, Naomi, you are here. What a mess, though. Sorry for the mess. That's fine. I'm used to this place, like a second home. There she was, my sister Jessica, appearing before a warning out me, struggling with morning sickness and feeling awful. Jessica occasionally visits our home, but at that moment, I was too unwell to properly entertain her. Hoping a little chat might distract me, I decided to start a conversation. You know, it looks like the baby in my belly is a girl. I keep thinking about dressing up and going shopping together someday. Wow, I didn't know you were thinking about things like that. Does Michael know? It's going to be a girl. Girl? Yeah, I told Michael right away. It's a girl. And you know, I dream of wearing matching outfits with my child. Jessica, you've always been so stylish. I'm counting on your advice when the time comes. Then Jessica turned around, smiling meaningfully. That's right. Michael is still a rookie doctor, but he'll eventually take over the family clinic. Poor Michael, having you as a clinic director's wife. Stop it, Jessica. That's too harsh. You really have a sharp tongue. Jessica is quite sarcastic and sometimes says things that hit hard. As her younger sister, I've gotten used to it over the years. Still, it can be quite tough when I'm feeling unwell. But Jessica quickly returned to her usual smile and waved her hand. Sorry, I just slipped into my usual mode. So, Naomi, anything bothering you lately? Bothering me? Well, Michael's been coming home late lately. He's a doctor, so it's unavoidable. But he seems to be at the hospital all the time, even on weekends. We hardly have time to talk these days. I see. Well, it's no surprise, considering someone like you claims to be a doctor's wife. I felt a chill at Jessica's icy smile. What I came to talk to you today, as she said this, Jessica glanced toward the living room door, then entering from the living room door was Michael. Michael, did you get off work early from the hospital today? I need to talk to you. Let's get a divorce. What kind of joke is this? What do you mean? As soon as I got back, I couldn't understand what Michael was saying at all. I knew he wasn't the type to make such a terrible joke at a time like this, especially since we had been together since college, and I was carrying his child. See, your beloved husband is saying this. You should listen to his request and let go quickly. What, Jessica? Michael looked at me awkwardly. I can't see you as a woman anymore after you kept eating and gaining weight. But this is morning sickness. I feel sick if I don't eat. Jessica looked triumphantly at me. That's the way it is, and the baby in your belly being a girl. She won't be the heir to the Smith Clinic. But in my belly, I carry Michael's child, a suitable heir. Jessica, I felt a sinking feeling as I watched Jessica lovingly stroke her belly. I'm 3 months pregnant and it's a boy, according to the tests. You can't be serious, Michael. What are you doing while I'm going through all this pain? That's why all your excuses, quitting your job and just eating all the time, are unacceptable. I'm tired of watching you lying around, constantly eating snacks. I take care of myself so I don't have morning sickness, even when pregnant. I won't lose my self-control and eat like a pig, unlike you. I was at a loss for words, seeing Jessica's smug face and Michael looking down at the floor, guilt-ridden. Jessica, being pregnant with a boy, I didn't know. But as an heir, I want a son. I prefer a beautiful wife like Jessica over a woman who keeps gaining weight without restraint. That's just wanting an heir and a beautiful wife is your own selfish desire, isn't it? I'll pay alimony, so let's part without any fuss. Seeing Michael apologizing, I knew that things could never go back to how they were. After that, Michael and I divorced, and I gave birth to our daughter as a single mother. His promise of alimony turned out to be just words, with no actual payment. Post-delivery, I had to work to survive since I had no one to rely on. Not knowing what else to do, I took a job at a nearby department store that's hiring. Life is unpredictable. My hard work and character caught the attention of someone. It was John Johnson, a well-regarded manager in the external sales department. Tough day. You're always working hard. Thanks. I'm about to finish up soon. Are you done for the day, John? Yeah. Oh, there's this great Italian place nearby. I want you to try, Naomi. And it's a little gift for your daughter. Through light conversations every time we met, we were drawn to each other and began dating, which led to our remarriage. Naomi, I might be a guy 20 years older than you, but I sincerely want to make you and your daughter happy. Will you marry me? Are you sure about me? I'd be delighted. Life after remarriage was truly blissful, a gentle husband, my daughter, and I lived a peaceful life. However, I failed to notice the ominous footsteps creeping closer to our tranquil days. One day, Jan had work, but I was off. Just as I thought of having a leisurely tea, an email arrived. It was from Jessica, and the content was shocking. A baby is born. I'm expecting a $5,000 baby shower gift. A sigh escaped me in front of that curt email. 5 years ago, Jessica had an affair with Michael and snatched him away. Now this and $5,000 for a baby shower gift seemed too much. I can't forget that day, nor can I, even if I tried. The expressions on Jessica and Michael's faces back then, the way they sought happiness together, ignoring my suffering from morning sickness, was unforgivable. I was at a loss on how to respond to Jess's email. Then, John returned from work, noticing something was off, and asked with concern, "What's wrong, Naomi? You look pale." "Oh, John, it's a message from my sister. She had a baby." "The sister who married your ex-husband, Michael?" "Yeah. I don't want to see her face or hear from her. Plus, she's asking for a $5,000 baby shower gift." As John listened and looked at my phone, he suddenly said, "Wait, this Jessica Smith name, you know her?" "I didn't mention her when we got married because I didn't want to remember." "Yeah, I've never been introduced to her by you, but I wonder." John, pondering while looking at the email, seemed to recall something. "We didn't properly greet her during our wedding, so let's visit her now. Also, I just remembered something I needed to do back at the department store." He then hurriedly prepared to leave, going back to the department store now. "Sorry, there's something I need to do." A few hours later, John returned with a thick file. "Is it okay if we visit your sister, Jessica, 2 weeks from now on Sunday? We both have the day off, and I'd like her to meet my parents and cousins too." "Your parents and cousins too." "Jessica loves being the center of attention, so she'll probably be fine. But why?" "I've heard your ex-husband, Michael, is famous for allergy treatment. My family has a history of allergies. Thought we might get some good advice." I remembered hearing from friends that Michael had taken over his father's allergy clinic. Michael's dad was an authority on allergy treatment, and Michael became an allergist too, a friend told me. Okay, I'll contact Jessica. Jessica quickly agreed when I contacted her. I want to see the baby and will bring a gift. Can I bring some relatives too? They really want to meet you. Of course, the more guests, the more gifts. Looking forward to seeing you in 2 weeks on Sunday. 2 weeks later, on Sunday, I visited Jessica's house with John, his parents, and relatives, including his cousins, in a quiet residential area. Her stylish house stood next to the clinic, its white walls gleaming. John's parents and relatives were surprised by its luxurious design, excited to meet the renowned allergist. Welcome. I've been waiting for you. Long time no see, Jessica. You look happy. Of course. I was worried about my first childbirth, but it all worked out in the end. I felt something off in Jessica's words. First childbirth? Didn't you say you were pregnant with a boy before? Oh, did I not tell you? I miscarried that time, so this is my first. John, standing beside me, nodded meaningfully. Seeing John's face, Jessica started to tremble. Oh, hello. Nice to meet you. Hello, you must be Naomi's sister. I heard a bit about the miscarriage. Yes, but I don't want to remember the miscarriage. Jessica turned her face away in a huff and started to walk off. Sorry about that. Oh, there's something I wanted to give you, Jessica. What? Something for me? Jan handed her an envelope. It's pastel color, and the word congratulations written on it. Thick enough to be noticeable even from the side. Here you go. I wanted to give this to Jessica personally. Got it right? Just what I've been waiting for. I glanced at John and whispered to him, Hey, we aren't rich, and we don't have to give Jessica the $5,000 she asked for. But John, unfazed, pet me off. It's fine. Trust me. You'll understand if you watch. What do you mean if I watch? While we were talking about the envelope, Jessica had already started opening it. I need to check if it's exactly $5,000. With this thickness, it might even be $10,000. The cute envelope was torn open with a ripping sound. Jessica's face clouded over the moment she opened it. What's this? John stepped forward with a salesperson's smile to explain. Mrs. Jessica Smith, this is a detailed statement of your purchases at the department store over the past 5 years. You said to put it on my tab, and this is the amount you've accumulated to date. What are you talking about? I don't know anything about this. The statement Jessica held listed names of luxury watches and brand bags. Seeing the 5-digit figure in the amount column, I was in disbelief. Indeed, Mr. Michael Smith himself and his parents are valued customers with an external sales card contract. However, with such a high amount, we needed to confirm just to be sure. My husband is the famous allergist, Michael Smith. As the wife of the clinic's director, using 1 or 2 external sales cards is nothing. Is that so? Also, there's something else I personally wanted to verify. John paused before continuing. About 5 years ago, we had complaints about a customer flaunting their external sales card and making extremely unpleasant remarks. Do you know anything about this? What's that? What does it matter? Since we had several complaints, I checked with the staff who were nearby at the time. The content of the conversation was so terrible that the staff remembered it clearly. Glancing sideways, I saw Jessica's expression harden. The staff said the conversation was about stealing someone's husband, who happens to be her brother-in-law. Could it be? Yes, that's right. And she bragged about using a fake pregnancy to break them up, laughing loudly. She talked about how she lied about miscarrying like it was some kind of heroic tale. That's when I realized that time, Jessica's claim of being pregnant with a boy, the hair, was all a lie to snatch Michael. Of course, there was no pregnancy, so no morning sickness or changes in her body shape. What are you saying? That story was about me. Matching the complaints with the external sales card, your name, Jessica Smith, came up. I can't believe this. You are marrying into a doctor's family, becoming the clinic director's wife. I couldn't stand it. I had to do whatever it took to tell Michael that I was the right one for him. I was overwhelmed with disbelief that Michael had fallen for Jessica's scheme, and she had lied to marry him. While I was stunned, the door opened. "What's this all about? Explain yourself, Jessica. Since when have you been here?" "From the beginning. I came back to get something I forgot and found the external sales card statement. And now I hear the pregnancy 5 years ago was all a lie. You trapped me." Michael shouted, and Jessica began to laugh. "So what? You got a beautiful wife, and we have a child now. So it's fine, right? Don't joke with me. I can't live with a liar like you. Let's get a divorce." "You can't be serious. What about our child? Don't you feel sorry for them?" Pushing her away, Michael glared at Jessica with a furious expression. "I can't live with a liar and reckless spender like you. It's not good for the child either. We're getting a divorce. I'm taking custody." "Are you kidding me? Do you have any idea what I went through to give birth to this child? This child needs to become a doctor in the future to support us. You're just thinking about yourself. There's no point in talking about this now. Let's handle the rest through a lawyer." The relatives who came along hoping to get some effective medicine from the famous allergist were frozen in shock at this chaotic scene. I was so embarrassed to admit that she was my sister. Afterward, Michael got a good lawyer specializing in divorce and successfully got divorced and won custody. Meanwhile, Jessica, who had been shopping to her heart's content on credit using the external sales card during her marriage, was now being chased for repayments. Hey, if your husband hadn't brought that statement, I'd still be the clinic director's wife. I'm being hounded for repayments now. Help your sister out in a pinch, would you? Why should I? You brought this on yourself, didn't you? And you should pay for your own shopping. Unexpectedly, I got a message from Michael via social media. Hey, can we start over? If Jessica hadn't lied about having a boy 5 years ago, we would have been fine as a couple. I want to see our daughter too. I had forgotten how you left me suffering with morning sickness and mocked me, then cheated on me. After 5 years of no contact, the last thing I wanted was to see his face again. Michael seemed to be struggling to keep the clinic he inherited from his father running. But you can't stop gossip due to the infidelity rumors. Patients stopped coming. The Smith Clinic, which Michael inherited, had a 1-star rating and unbelievable bad reviews on a hospital review site. It seemed only a matter of time before he would have to close the clinic he was so fixated on inheriting. Ironically, he was so obsessed with having a male heir. My husband, daughter, and I continue to live happily as a family. Naomi, are you ready? Shall we head out soon? Yes, I was just remembering how delicious the spaghetti you brought me from that restaurant was back when I was a single mother. Jen used to order from a restaurant for takeout as a way to approach me. Back then, my daughter was small, and since we weren't dating, we never ate at the restaurant, just as colleagues. You had just gotten divorced and were having a hard time, right? I thought even a little bit of delicious food could bring you happiness. It was your kindness that drew me to you, the dish that brought us together back then. It was just my daughter and me eating takeout, but now it's different. I'm happy that we can eat together as a family. Who would have thought that a day like this, going out with you and our daughter, would come?
Look, I'm letting you off the hook this time. Just come back, and I'll pretend I didn't see anything. What is this guy talking about? He doesn't get it. Time to show him some hard truths. My name is Olivia, and I'm 32. I've been married to my husband Mason for a year now. We met at a friend's party, hit it off, started dating, and eventually got married. We're not getting any younger after all. Mason isn't the most exciting guy, but he's calm and steady. I thought we'd be together until we were old. We both work, so we don't have to worry about money. We got married without overthinking it. I do most of the housework since we're both busy with our jobs. Mason never helps. He's either relaxing or leaving early, rarely home. But I never found housework a burden. My parents lived like this too, and I thought this was how a wife's life should be. I have a regular 9-to-5 job and no major hobbies. Mason and I were never very talkative. We respected each other's space, and it was never a problem. Life just went on. One night, Mason came home late, probably from drinking with coworkers or friends, who knows. I welcomed him. "Mason, you're home late. Had a long night out, huh? Dinner's still there if you want it, but I guess you're not eating this late, are you?" He turned around, said nothing, and walked into the living room, ignoring me. I sighed. Here we go again. Whenever Mason is in a bad mood, he gets very quiet, so I figured something at work or during his night out must have upset him. Best to let him be. I know better than to bother him when he's like this. I felt his presence from the living room but shrugged it off and went to bed. He'd probably be back to his cheerful self by morning. It was the same old story, and I didn't give it a second thought. The next morning, while I was preparing breakfast, Mason came into the kitchen. "Good morning," I greeted him cheerfully. Mason glanced at me, grabbed some milk from the fridge, and left without a word. I was a bit surprised by his coldness. It wasn't like him. He still seemed to be in a bad mood. I never thought I'd see the day when he would act like this. We both valued our independence and space. I hadn't tried to talk to Mason directly, so I decided to wait and see. I continued preparing lunch boxes for both Mason and myself. However, things didn't go back to normal that easily. Mason remained distant the following night and the day after. At this point, I was genuinely concerned. Days turned into weeks, and Mason continued to give me the silent treatment. I tried reaching out through WhatsApp and even left him notes, but he ignored it all. However, he'd eat the meals I prepared. I noticed the empty lunchbox in the sink, so I knew he ate the packed lunch. So I put a note in a cooler bag. I thought if he found a note while enjoying a lunch I made with love, he'd have to react. But that was another miss. Mason said nothing. Before I knew it, over a month had passed in this strange silence. I felt helpless. I had tried everything, but nothing worked. Then, one evening, I took a drastic step. I deliberately didn't prepare dinner. Every evening, I made dinner when I got home. But what if I didn't? How would Mason, who's been ignoring me, react? I decided to find out. When Mason came home, I pretended to be watching TV in the living room. Mason came into the living room and looked intently at the table where dinner usually waited. But tonight, the table was empty. After looking at the barren table, Mason turned his gaze to me. Holding my breath, I waited for him to say something, but he walked into the living room in complete silence. I heard the front door open and shut with a bang. I was stunned. Why am I being ignored like this? I had no idea. I was left bewildered, sitting alone on the living room couch. The next morning, I woke up and went to the living room. Mason was already gone. Did he go to work already? Curious, I looked on the living room table and found a note. Reading the words on it, my eyes went wide. "Stop skipping out on your wifely duties," it read, scribbled hastily in messy handwriting. Something inside me snapped. That's it. I'm done. Why do I have to keep pleasing Mason? Is this going to be my life forever? We were never a clingy couple, but this is just unacceptable. There's no reason for him to do this, nor an opportunity for me to even ask about it. For the last month, the stifling silence in the house has been unbearable. I wrote next to Mason's scribble, "I'm going back to my parents' house." I quickly packed up my things and went home. My sudden arrival surprised my parents, but after I explained how Mason had been ignoring me for over a month without any apparent reason, they understood and welcomed me warmly. It felt good to be in an environment where I could have a normal conversation. For now, I decided to stay here and see how Mason reacts before deciding on my next steps. I didn't hear from Mason the day I left. Knowing him, he's probably assuming I'm just trying to make a point and will continue to ignore me. Well, let's see how long this lasts. Days turned into weeks, and there was still no call or message from Mason via WhatsApp or any other means. He didn't even bother to visit my parents' house. Before I knew it, half a year had passed. I had nearly forgotten about Mason altogether. Then one day, as I was leaving my parents' house to go shopping, there he was. Mason, standing with a defiant and angry expression. I was shocked and froze in my tracks. Mason just glared at me, still not saying a word. Is this game still going on? It was almost laughable how silent Mason was. But then in the next moment, he tried to walk into my parents' house without saying a word. Whoa, hold on there. I stopped him. Mason looked at me, his face a mix of anger and disbelief, but still silent. I warned, don't just walk in. I will call the police. Finally, after more than 6 months, Mason spoke, a snide smile on his lips. Look at you, acting all high and mighty. Since when do you get like this? Just because you're at your parents' house doesn't mean you can talk to me like that. I remembered Mason being a bit rough around the edges, but not like this. Lost in thought, I was jolted back to reality when Mason suddenly erupted. What were you thinking? Leaving the house for half a year, having a good time at your parents'? Get a grip. Mason kept ranting, then gestured as if to say, I can't believe this. Look, I'll cut you some slack this time, okay? Just come home. I'm willing to overlook it this once. Mason spoke so condescendingly. I calmly responded, I think you're confused. You and I are strangers now, you know? Mason's face went blank, then turned red with rage. He started yelling again. What are you saying? Have you lost your mind? We're married, aren't we? Stop playing games. His intense outburst silenced me for a moment. He kept yelling, I'm saying I'll forgive you this time, so stop messing around and pack your bags. At that moment, my own anger boiled over. He talked like he was doing me a favor by forgiving me, as if I'd done something wrong. That infuriated me even more. Moreover, it seemed Mason had no clue what had happened in the last 6 months. Finally, I snapped at Mason, who was still yelling. I received divorce papers from your mother, signed them, and already filed them with the court. So we're not married anymore. Got it? We're strangers. Total strangers. Understand? I emphasized the word strangers, and Mason looked at me, his face drained of color. He seemed genuinely shocked. Here's what happened, I continued. A month after I moved back to my parents' home, your mother, Helen, called me to a cafe near our house. We had never been close, and I hadn't seen her for a while. After brief pleasantries, she handed me an envelope. What's this? I asked, tilting my head. Open it. Even you will understand, she said. I opened the envelope and pulled out the paper inside. It was a divorce petition, already signed and stamped by you. Confused, I looked at Helen. The eyes of your mother, who was glaring at me, were the same as yours, full of disdain. While putting the divorce petition back into the envelope, I asked her, So, is this Mason's doing? Did he say anything to you about this? Helen let out an exaggerated sigh before answering. Oh yes, he said plenty. Would you like to hear? I smiled at her and replied, Yes, please go ahead. She launched into her story. According to her, Mason had been bad-mouthing me for a while now, saying that I was a useless and incompetent wife who stopped doing any housework after we got married, that I quit my job and lazed around at home all day, and that whenever something didn't go my way, I would run back to my parents and act like a spoiled child. Helen's eyes never left mine as she spoke, and it was clear she believed every word of Mason's lies. There was no point in arguing with her, I thought. When she was done talking, Helen finally asked, So what are you going to do? Not that I want to meddle, but you're being pretty awful, you know. By the time I walked out of that cafe, my mind was made up. I smiled and told her, if he wants a divorce, then that's what he'll get. Helen glared at me one last time, slapped some money on the table for her share, and walked out of the cafe. I went straight to my parents' house, signed the divorce papers, and submitted them to the court the very next day. While I was explaining all of this, Mason's face turned increasingly pale. It seemed he hadn't been informed by Helen at all. But honestly, I didn't care. After all, I had already trusted Helen with the signed divorce papers. Mason must have had the same idea in mind, I figured. Once I finished telling my side, Mason blurted out in a panic, No, you've got it all wrong. I only filled out those divorce papers to keep my mom off my back. I never intended to submit them. They're invalid. Panicked or just confused, he started making no sense. Besides, you're the one who will suffer if we divorce. So let's go to the court right now and have them withdrawn. I gave Mason a cold stare, then tilted my head. Why would it be a problem for me if we got divorced? Mason suddenly grinned as if he had won. Think about your age. At your age with a divorced history, no one will want you. That's why I'm saying I'll take you back. This is for your benefit. You get it? I'm saying we can pretend the divorce never happened and you should be happy. Mason said, his arrogance and delusional thinking palpable. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Listen, we're not kids. A divorce doesn't just get erased. And for the record, I'm already married to someone else. Mason's jaw dropped and he went silent. What? Really? Do you want me to repeat myself? I'm married to someone else. Mason, who had a look of disbelief, suddenly started making a fuss. That's a lie. You're just trying to look good, aren't you? You're making up stories to get me to go away, aren't you? You're really making a fool out of me. You know that such lies won't work. As I was wondering how to explain to this idiot, a presence came from behind me, and a man appeared at the entrance. The man looked at me and Mason alternately, looking confused. Mason, for his part, was surprised to see a stranger coming out of my parents' home and fell silent. When I looked at the man, he tilted his head and asked, "Is something wrong?" Feeling awkward, I smiled and turned to Mason. "This is my husband, Noah." Noah greeted Mason with a slight, skeptical nod. Mason took a step back and looked up at Noah. It made sense. Noah was a former national rugby player with an imposing physique. Overwhelmed by Noah's appearance, Mason suddenly started to make excuses. No, you've got it all wrong. My old boss told me you've been married for about a year now, and your wife might start to get a little uncomfortable. Better put her in her place, he said. So I did, and guess what? Turns out he got dumped by his wife and kids. What a fool, right? I was just doing what he told me to do. I never wanted to do any of that stuff. You understand, right, Olivia? I looked at Mason with a gaze filled with disgust, fed up with his pathetic excuses. Mason looked puzzled, maybe because my reaction wasn't what he expected. Then Noah spoke up. Sorry, but could you leave immediately and never come back here? If you approach Olivia again, I'll call the police. As he said this, Noah firmly pushed Mason out of the doorway. Intimidated by Noah's force and determination, Mason fled the scene. For a while, we both remained wary, concerned that Mason might harbor a grudge and do something irrational. But days turned into weeks, and we never heard from him again. One day, curiosity got the best of me, and I reached out to a mutual friend to inquire about Mason. We began by catching up on casual topics, but when I asked about Mason, our friend sighed and filled me in. Surprisingly, Mason quit his job just a few days after showing up at your parents' house. The reason? Turns out Mason was always in agreement with his boss, whom he trusted when the boss harassed subordinates at work. It became a big issue in the company. As a result, the boss was resigned. Resigned being a euphemism, he was basically demoted to some remote mountainous area I'd never heard of. Apparently, Mason was expected to be transferred as well, but he quit out of pride. According to our friend, he's still jobless. He's been looking for work, but his arrogance has hindered his efforts. Even when recruiters offer him opportunities, he declines interviews. Furthermore, news of him quitting reached his mother, who then disowned him due to her own extreme personality. Finally, our friend said he blames everything on his old manager and just drowns his sorrows every day. At this rate, he'll ruin his health before he ever finds another job. It's a mess. I hope he finds a new spouse or something, but that's unlikely. We both chuckled as we hung up the phone. Mason seemed to be drowning his days in job hunting and drinking. Thanks to him, I am now living a peaceful life with Noah. Interestingly, Noah was actually my colleague. Upon hearing about my divorce, he had eagerly pursued me. Though we started dating only 6 months after my divorce, which made me somewhat hesitant, I was quickly drawn to his confident manner and kind personality. After getting married, Noah told me that he had always had a crush on me and he was heartbroken when I got married. I laughed and apologized for not noticing his feelings sooner. Noah helps me around the house, a task I used to handle alone. Whenever we eat together, he always says how delicious the food is with a smile. It's these little things that make me incredibly happy, something I never expected. I was probably numb to it all, having grown up with old-fashioned parents. Now I am living a sparkling married life with Noah, who always delights in even the most ordinary things. I'm convinced that with him, I'll have a happy life all the way through our golden years. And so I am certain.
My name is Sarah, and these days, I collaborate with my husband John at his family-run company. The enterprise, led by my father-in-law, Richard, is a small but inviting establishment employing about 6 individuals. Richard, a man of few words, seldom involves himself in the day-to-day operations of the company. Instead, John, poised to become the next president, works tirelessly, actively pursuing clients and securing new projects, demonstrating his dedication to the company's expansion. During significant projects, all the employees come together, creating a vibrant and enthusiastic atmosphere. I've been part of this spirited environment for the past 10 years, ever since I got married. However, my mother-in-law, Nancy, seems to harbor some discontent about my role. As I returned home early to prepare dinner while John remained at the office, Nancy, who had been part of the family business until our marriage, confronted me with disapproving words. "How long do you plan on clinging to our family business?" Nancy asked, her words laden with criticism. Nancy, who had looked forward to relaxation post-retirement, appeared to redirect her energy into scrutinizing my choices. In response, I tried to maintain composure, asking, "What do you mean by clinging?" Nancy retorted with a cutting tone, suggesting that I must have married John out of necessity and was now taking advantage of working in their company. Sighing inwardly, I realized that such accusations from her had become more frequent lately. When I got married, I willingly left my previous job to join John's family-run business. It was my decision, not a result of unemployment. However, Nancy seemed convinced of my incompetence at work. I attempted to explain, "Mom, it's not that I couldn't work elsewhere. I chose to join John's company." Her dismissive retort revealed her lack of understanding, as she believed she saw through my supposed hidden motives. The issues with my mother-in-law extended beyond words. Despite quitting her job with the promise of managing the household, she refused to contribute, leaving my father-in-law to repeatedly request her assistance with housework. Instead, she stubbornly insisted, "I've worked all my life. Now it's the daughter-in-law's turn to do the housework." Consequently, the responsibility often fell on me to prepare dinner, clean up after meals, and manage other household tasks. One sunny afternoon, mustering courage, I decided to address the domestic issue. "Nancy," I began hesitantly, "I've noticed the dishes often get left in the sink. It would be helpful if you could tidy up after your meals." My small request, however, triggered an angry response. She accused me of giving orders in her own house and questioned my right as a daughter-in-law to dictate her actions. Caught in this exhausting exchange, I realized that if I didn't start preparing dinner soon, we'd be eating much later than usual. Despite my internal frustrations, I managed to keep a composed exterior. "Mom, let's continue this conversation later," I suggested, attempting to diffuse the tension momentarily. Needing to focus on preparing dinner, as it seemed we would eat late tonight, Nancy finally retreated to the living room, leaving me alone with my thoughts amidst the clatter of cooking utensils. Both Richard and John were aware of Nancy's mistreatment towards me as their daughter-in-law, and they attempted to intervene whenever they witnessed it happening. However, their efforts seemed to have little effect. Each time they confronted the situation, their faces betrayed concern and frustration, a testament to their desire to foster harmony in our family dynamic. Ironically, whenever Richard and John scolded Nancy for her behavior, she redirected her anger towards me, becoming even more hostile and sharp with her words. Her usually kind and gentle demeanor twisted with disdain, her tone cutting deeper than before. Though I had never experienced physical violence, the emotional toll of Nancy's words was significant. Richard and John's support had been my solace, allowing me to somewhat overlook Nancy's harsh words. Until one unimaginable morning. Just after I had finished cleaning up from breakfast and was preparing to leave for work amidst the morning rush, Nancy exclaimed, "Oh my, what a mess they trash here!" And without warning, she doused my handbag with a bucket of water. I was stunned, a mixture of shock and anger rendering me speechless. "What are you doing, Nancy?" I managed to stutter out, my voice trembling with disbelief. Nancy's response was flippant, resembling that of a mischievous child. "Oh, was that your stuff? I thought it was just a big piece of trash." Her casual dismissal infuriated me. Even if you thought it was trash, who pours water on it? What kind of mindset is that? Now the carpet is all wet. What about the vacuum cleaner? My words were a jumble of anger and confusion as I frantically emptied the water-soaked contents of my bag, including documents I needed for work, onto the table. Nancy responded nonchalantly, her face calm, showing no signs of remorse or concern for my distress. "Because you don't need to go to work anymore." I was baffled. In our living room, bathed in morning light, I sat opposite Nancy, her expression colder and more resolute than usual. It was as if she had made a decision that would change everything. "Excuse me?" My response was laden with confusion and surprise. "You've been clinging to this house for 10 years, but finally I can get rid of you." Her words pierced my heart, her voice carrying a level of anger and determination I had never heard before. My mind reeled, and my heart filled with sorrow. "Getting rid of me?" I questioned, disbelief in my voice. Her words made me feel like an outsider in this family. "In fact, my daughter is joining the company, so we need you to leave. Today's your last day. Well, all you have to do today is bow your head to your father-in-law and John, apologizing for all the trouble you've caused." Her mocking laughter further wounded me. She was using my position at work to force me out. I had dedicated years to that job, building respect and memories. I was dumbfounded. My heart was filled with disbelief at her merciless decision. I had devoted myself to this family, but it seemed my sacrifices meant nothing to her. "Are you sure about this? Wasn't Jessica working in a clothing store in Manhattan?" My words reflected my confusion and apprehension. My job was more than just a source of income. It was my avenue for self-fulfillment. Meanwhile, Jessica, my sister-in-law, seemed to have grown tired of city life and had chosen to return to the family. She said she was tired of dealing with the cold people of Manhattan, so I told her as she came back home, "I have a job ready for her." She agreed to return immediately. "Now that she's coming back, I want you out of this house." Her words were difficult to comprehend. She was ready to upend my life with a single decision, completely disregarding my place in the family, without even listening to me. "I've written your resignation letter," she said, handing me an envelope. She effectively expelled me from the house. In that moment, my heart shattered completely. Everything I had built over the years was reduced to nothing, treated like a mere piece of paper. Her actions severed our family bond irreparably. I headed to the company, just a brisk 3-minute walk from my home, my mind a whirlwind of apprehension and anticipation. As I walked under the cool morning sky, each step felt heavy with the weight of what was to come. Upon reaching the office, I shared with my father-in-law Richard and my husband John. I relayed what my mother-in-law had said. Their faces were a mix of shock and thinly veiled anger, yet they remained composed. They suggested that maybe, just maybe, it was time for me to resign to show her the reality of the situation. This suggestion sent my heart into turmoil. Having worked tirelessly in our family-run business for years, I barely knew what a long vacation felt like, aside from brief respites during Thanksgiving and the holiday season. Encouraged by John and Richard's gentle words, "Why don't you spread your wings for a change?" I made up my mind to embark on a little trip. As I packed, I found myself pondering deeply about my life, my choices, and what lay ahead. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law Jessica, who had come to replace me at the company, shockingly didn't show up until 1:00 p.m. Her irresponsible attitude left John and Richard, who had been holding the fort in my absence, in a state of dismay. Jessica seemed utterly disinterested in understanding the work despite their attempts to explain it to her. Hearing about this, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of anxiety about the future of our company, even as I looked forward to my trip. Departing without encountering my mother-in-law, I swiftly set off. During the trip, as I enjoyed the view outside the train, I reflected on my life, the past, the present, and what was yet to come. Relishing the local seafood delicacies, I contemplated deeply about myself, my family, and our business. However, the tranquility of my fourth day was shattered when Jessica called me in tears. "What's going on?" Mom said it was an easy job, just sitting in a chair. But John and Dad are acting like I can't do anything right. Her words, most likely given to her by my mother-in-law, took me by surprise. Even as I enjoyed my leisure, I realized it was time to address the situation. "So, Jessica, how proficient are you with computers?" Hesitantly, she replied. "Well, I usually watch videos online and play games too." Her answer indicated her limited experience with technical aspects. Delving deeper, I asked about her familiarity with software tools such as Word or Excel, and her response was puzzled. Considering her background in the Manhattan apparel industry, it was unlikely that she never used a computer. Tasks such as tracking sales and managing inventory would have required her to use Excel. When asked if she could handle calculations for sales or fill in documents, she confidently answered, "I could handle that task." However, when probed further with, "Can you calculate tax too, right?" her confidence waned, and she responded uncertainly. This question was a test of her mathematical skills and her ability to apply them in a business context. While Jessica might possess other skills, it was apparent she felt insecure about the required skill set for the job. Her discomfort seemed particularly rooted in her struggle with calculations, which could be why she faced criticism from Richard and John. First and foremost, it was necessary to give my mother-in-law and her cohort, who tried to oust me, a taste of their own medicine. To begin with, since you're taking over my job, I expect you to handle the accounting tasks efficiently. Be mindful of email etiquette. A casual tone suitable for friends is utterly inappropriate for business communication. Also, you'll be responsible for scheduling the staff shifts. Though our team is small, everyone's requests for time off are carefully considered, so make sure not to prioritize your own convenience over theirs. As I continued to list down my demands, I could hear her sobbing on the other end of the line. But I was told I wouldn't have to do anything. Why are there so many tasks? I didn't come back home for this. She abruptly ended the call. In the following 3 days, I decided to enjoy sightseeing in Manhattan, where Jessica had fled. From my experience, I learned that not everyone in Manhattan is cold-hearted. In fact, it seemed rarer to find people as cold-hearted as my mother-in-law and Jessica, who had conspired to drive me away. A week after leaving my job, I returned to my in-laws' house. Upon my arrival, Nancy, with her face flushed red, confronted me with a burst of anger. "How dare you make my daughter cry? You won't get away with this," Nancy exclaimed furiously, her eyes brimming with anger and misunderstanding. She made a move to grab me, but John and Richard quickly intervened. They tried to calm her down, but her anger seemed far from subsiding. John sighed deeply before speaking. "Jessica is crying because she was scolded for trying to boss around her employees, despite her inability to do anything right. It's not Sarah's fault. Besides, Sarah hasn't been here for a week, so there's no way she could have upset Jessica. Mother, you really need to stop these baseless accusations." John's voice was calm yet carried weight, trying to convey the facts and clear the misunderstanding. "But it's because of her. This woman is the reason for Jessica's suffering," Nancy retorted, her voice emotional, directing her baseless suspicions towards me. Her words lacked any foundation of truth. "Where is Jessica, by the way?" I asked, looking around the living room. But Jessica was nowhere to be seen, adding more mystery to the already puzzling situation. It doesn't matter to me that Nancy is upset about Jessica, but Jessica has no place to go since she terminated her lease in her Manhattan apartment. I thought she would be at her parents' house, but her absence raised questions. I pondered. John explained, "Jessica's locked herself in her room. She's been crying and saying she doesn't want to go to work anymore." It seemed like Jessica had run away from learning the job well. It was understandable that she would find it challenging, considering she lacked the skills to fill in for me. "You've been poisoning John and Richard against me, haven't you? If not, they wouldn't say the company ran better with me than with the incompetent Jessica," Nancy accused me vehemently. Her words were filled with long-standing misunderstandings and prejudices, leaving me utterly perplexed. She seemed to have always viewed me as an adversary, her words reflecting years of misconceptions. John let out a heavy sigh, his face showing weariness and frustration with the tangled web of emotions in this family. He had tried repeatedly to resolve the misunderstandings among family members, but his efforts seemed far from fruitful. "Mom," he began, trying once again to bring clarity to the situation. "I realize it might sound a bit unusual, but Sarah is truly exceptional at her work. She holds a certification in bookkeeping, and her secretarial skills are top-notch. Moreover, she has studied Spanish and even has experience studying abroad. When it comes to dealing with multiple languages at our company, Sarah is the one who handles everything," John explained with a sense of pride, and his mother Nancy looked utterly surprised. Nancy had assumed that I quit my job as soon as I joined the family, so she had no idea about my contributions and achievements at work. "What? That sounds like something straight out of a TV drama. Actually, back in college, I was so focused on getting various certifications that I immersed myself in my studies, to the point where I hardly participated in clubs or had time for a romantic relationship. It was during this phase of my life that I met John, who visited my company for business. I inadvertently found myself sharing the story of how John and I first met. However, I realized that this wasn't what Nancy wanted to hear, so I steered the conversation back to the original topic. In a nutshell, I was entrusted with a wide array of responsibilities at the company, from handling accounting tasks to schedule coordination, liaising with other companies, and managing employee shifts. There were numerous tasks under my purview. Thanks to that, I was able to focus on reaching out to other companies for business deals. The work environment became much more comfortable compared to the times when you were around. Mom," John added, leaving Nancy with her mouth agape in amazement. Just then, Richard, John's father, chimed in with a comment that took me by surprise. "We're going to shut down that company soon." Actually, Jessica made a big blunder. Despite being asked to prepare some documents, she decided to handle phone calls because it seemed more fun doing so. While John and I were away, she ended up behaving rudely to the person in charge from Company A. Of course, I got a call to confirm this. Hearing this, I was so shocked that I instinctively covered my mouth with my hand. "I can't believe Jessica would do something like that," I murmured. Filled with disbelief, the thought that Jessica's actions might lead to the downfall of our company flashed through my mind, filling me with dread. However, as I wallowed in these anxious thoughts, the story took an unexpected turn. When I explained the situation, they suggested it might be time to end the family business. We had mentioned this before, right? About being absorbed by another company. The president of Company A stepped forward, saying he was interested. This was an unexpected yet long-hoped-for development. With a family-run business, there are limitations, and it's uncertain whether we could consistently acquire a stable customer base. That's why John had always been working hard in sales, trying to secure new clients. Being absorbed by a larger company could mean securing a steady customer base. The once uncertain future suddenly seemed to hold a glimmer of hope. However, this news brought relief only to me, John, and his father. John's mother suddenly opposed the idea, saying, "That's not acceptable. John must become the president. This company is ours, isn't it?" I was taken aback by the sudden change in the situation. It seemed that more than a stable future, Nancy was concerned about maintaining the status of being part of a company president's family, part of an executive family. "And you're telling me he's not going to be the president anymore? Absolutely not acceptable," exclaimed Nancy passionately. This commotion piqued the interest of Jessica, who was upstairs in her room, leaving her to come down to the living room to see what was happening. In response to the chaos started by Nancy, Richard spoke up with a calm but final statement. "I am divorcing you, so either way, you will no longer be part of this executive family. Not only have you not changed your attitude towards my wife, but you also neglect household chores. To top it off, you spend your days out with young men instead of being home. I have no intention of supporting such a wife any longer. This was news to both me and John. We were so shocked that we could only stare at Sarah's father-in-law with wide eyes. It seemed he had planned to discuss divorce from the beginning, as he took out divorce papers and a photo of Nancy with a young man from the living room shelf, placing them on the table. "If you sign the divorce papers now and leave with your belongings, I won't demand alimony. I know getting any money from you would be futile anyway." "So unfair. Divorce? How can you say that? Haven't I devoted myself to this house all these years? Have you done any proper housework in these last 10 years? Have you ever helped with the business? Does spending someone else's money on young men count as devotion to the house?" It was the first time we saw Sarah's usually mild-mannered and reserved father-in-law this angry. Seeing this, Jessica, who had come down to the living room, was visibly trembling from the shock. "Jessica, you're part of this too. You came back home because you couldn't make it in Manhattan, and now you can't find a job but still act all high and mighty. In the end, you stopped working entirely. Whose escapism did you inherit? It's time for you to leave this house." Next, we saw Jessica's shock and resistance. She believed she was an important member of the family, but the reality was different. "Wait a minute, Dad. Mom might be a lost cause, but I'm your precious daughter, right?" The family conflict deepened as Jessica asserted her place, revealing her betrayal towards her mother. "Jessica, are you betraying Mom now?" Nancy was astounded, feeling betrayed by her daughter at the last moment. However, as the two started to create a commotion, he sternly silenced them with a shout. "If I just kick you out, it'll cause trouble for everyone, so I've asked an acquaintance to take you in. They'll be here soon to pick you up. Get your minimum belongings ready." Left with no choice but to obey, Nancy began packing her belongings with Jessica. After writing the divorce notice, then an acquaintance of the stepfather arrived to take Nancy and Jessica away. The person who came to pick them up was running a factory with dormitories, and it seemed they would be working there. John, Richard, and I talked to the employees about the company being absorbed and prepared for the busy days ahead for our future. Finally, I found out I was pregnant at that time. When I told the president of Company A, he was delighted and promised to send someone to replace me, which was a huge relief. Currently, John and Richard are working even harder for the sake of our upcoming child. Thank you for looking after our little one for the past week. I'll be picking him up today. What? We weren't home. Sophia's sister-in-law's voice on the other end of the line sounded shaken. Wait, where is my son right now? Sophia's concern spiked. My name is Sophia, a 34-year-old stay-at-home mom. I've been married to John for 4 years. Last year, we moved in with John's parents to help care for his dad, Matthew, who was struggling with his legs, and his mom, Victoria, who became his primary caregiver. We thought it would be too much for Victoria to handle both housework and caregiving, so John and I offered to move in. At first, they were hesitant, but eventually welcomed the idea. John's brother, James, works for a global company and is currently abroad on business. That's why John, being the younger son, felt it was his responsibility to stay close to his parents and initiated the move. Living in my in-laws' house, I had no complaints. Victoria always appreciated my cooking and help with chores. They treated me kindly, and I always felt serene in their presence. John has always been kind-hearted, much like his parents. Living together was enjoyable until tragedy struck. Matthew's health deteriorated, and he passed away at the hospital. His death deeply affected Victoria and John. We held a funeral where many people attended, including James, who came back from abroad. John, Sophia, thank you for taking on so much responsibility as the eldest son. James expressed his gratitude during the difficult time. I should have been the one to stay with Dad. Don't worry about it, bro. Your job overseas is important. That's right. I found happiness living with Matthew and Victoria. Thanks, both of you. I have to head back to my assignment, so please continue to look after Mom. James expressed gratitude before leaving, clearly feeling bad about not being more involved. He seemed sorry for not participating in household affairs after Matthew's passing. Despite James's departure, we continued living with Victoria, not just because he asked us to, but out of genuine concern for her well-being now that she was alone. Victoria appeared deeply saddened since the funeral, and both John and I were cautious in our interactions with her, not wanting to overwhelm her. We carried on as usual, being attentive to her needs. Gradually, Victoria started feeling better. Thanks, both of you. I'm okay now. Sorry for worrying you, she said, smiling warmly. Both John and I were relieved to see Victoria back to her old self. From then on, the three of us lived peacefully as a family. However, a new source of tension emerged in the form of Olivia, my brother-in-law's wife. "Hello, looking forward to another great day," she would say, dropping off her son Alexander frequently. Alexander was a well-behaved 5-year-old, and Olivia believed leaving him with us would be a good distraction for Victoria, who had recently lost Matthew. While Victoria enjoyed spending time with her grandchild, Olivia's constant dropping off of Alexander became exhausting. Olivia claimed she couldn't take care of him during her part-time weekend work, insisting that Victoria, now free from caregiving responsibilities, should accommodate him. Although Olivia's assertion wasn't entirely wrong, it didn't make it acceptable for her to impose her child on us without considering our plans. I wonder why she doesn't work during the weekdays when Alexander is at preschool. That way, she could pick him up after work. It's puzzling. Do you think my brother knows about this? I mean, if he's in a global company, does she even need to work this much? John and I had that conversation when Alexander got dropped off during the weekends. John couldn't relax after work, and I had a part-time job on weekdays, so we preferred peaceful weekends with John and Victoria. Our plans would get thrown off when Olivia suddenly showed up to drop off her child. Finally, John and I asked Olivia to minimize the frequency of her visits. "We have our plans too, you know. It's troublesome when you keep leaving Alexander here," John remarked. Olivia retorted defensively, "Oh, what plans could possibly be more important than my job?" John shot back, "Why not you consider working when Alexander is at preschool? Then there's no need to leave him here." This infuriated Olivia. How terrible. You people don't care about family at all. It's sad to have relatives like you, Olivia said emotionally, screaming loudly. John and I were taken aback, but Victoria stepped in to mediate. "Let it be, John. I enjoy spending time with my grandson, so it's no problem for me." "Good on you, Victoria. I knew you'd say that. Alexander seems fond of you, and it's better to leave him with someone we can trust," Olivia commented with a smug look on her face. Since then, the frequency of her dropping off Alexander increased. Lately, she's even been bringing him over from preschool until the evening on weekdays. I was surprised to find Alexander at home when I returned from my part-time job. Sure, it's tough for her to look after the kid alone while James is away on a business trip, but she's definitely taking advantage of us. At this rate, we're practically taking care of Alexander half of the month. When he's with us, we often end up feeding him lunch, snacks, and sometimes even dinner, and Olivia doesn't contribute any money for food or anything. The burden keeps increasing on our end, and it didn't sit well with me. However, Victoria accepts everything, so neither John nor I could say anything further. Amidst all this, an unexpected incident occurred. The weather had been scorching hot, and the moment you step outside, you're dripping with sweat. We were all cautious, and one day, I returned home from my part-time job to find Victoria had collapsed. We immediately called an ambulance, and they confirmed it was heat stroke. Luckily, she fell just before I got home, so she was all right. But she had to be hospitalized for some time. I got so focused on housework, I didn't realize I was overheating. "I'm really sorry for worrying you," Victoria apologized. "It's okay, Mom. Thankfully, you're safe now." John and I reassured her, chatting with Victoria in her hospital room. We were relieved, but we had planned a family trip set to depart the day after tomorrow. If Mom's in the hospital, the trip's going to be a problem. "Yeah, we'll need to cancel," we discussed. As we were discussing this, Victoria suggested, "Why don't you two go ahead without me?" "But Mom, we're worried about you." We expressed our concerns. "Right, we can't just leave you behind and go," we insisted. "You two always help me out, so now's the time to have some alone time as a couple." "I'll be fine. I'm in a hospital, after all," Victoria encouraged us. Feeling reassured, we decided to proceed with the trip. It was a waste to pay the cancellation fee for 3 people, and maybe I could change it without having to pay anything if I'm the only one who doesn't want to go. After being encouraged so much, we decided to go on the trip as well. Since John was also on summer vacation, we got into the car early in the morning on the day of the trip and headed for our Ocean View hotel. Excited for a trip as a couple after so long, we stopped at various shops on the way and found some knickknacks that Victoria would like in a chic boutique. While thinking about grabbing some lunch at a cafe, my phone rang. It was Olivia. "Sophia, why aren't you answering your phone? I called an hour ago and even sent messages," Olivia questioned. "Sorry, we're out at the moment. Must be nice going out while I'm working, huh?" Olivia began with her usual passive-aggressive comments. Just when I thought everything was fine, Olivia dropped the bombshell. "Look, I left Alexander by the front door. Take him inside and look after him, would you?" "What? All right, you handle the rest." "Wait, hold on a sec." I tried to say more, but she hung up the phone. Despite my attempts to call her back, it seemed she had turned off her phone, probably annoyed with my constant calling. I promptly discussed the situation with John. Despite today not being excessively hot, it was still summer, and leaving someone outside for hours could lead to heat stroke. Moreover, who leaves a 5-year-old alone outside? The problem was that John and I were already far from home, having left early in the morning. Seeing me panic, John calmly said, "Relax, let's think this through. I'll call my brother. He's probably off work today." With that, John called James, and fortunately, James picked up quickly. John explained the situation, and James, shocked, provided us with Olivia's parents' contact number. John then called Olivia's parents, explained the situation, and they agreed to pick up Alexander. It turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Olivia's parents lived only about an hour's drive from us, so they could retrieve Alexander without much trouble. Apparently, he was sitting in the shade, looking distressed. Olivia's parents quickly gave him some water and took him to their house. He was safe for now. John and I felt relieved and went on to enjoy our trip. But Olivia turned out to be one exhausting person. We agreed that we needed to give her a piece of our minds. However, what happened next was beyond our expectations. About a week later, Olivia called me, saying, "Hey, thanks for watching Alexander for a week. I'll pick him up today," as if she had done nothing wrong. "What are you talking about? What do you mean, you got heat stroke and lost your mind?" "I'm coming to pick up Alexander," I responded. "We weren't even home. We were out of state when you said you left Alexander at our doorstep," I added. Olivia was clearly shaken over the phone. "Then where is Alexander?" "He's at your parents' place," I informed her. "At my parents'? They've been watching over him," I continued. "No way." Olivia abruptly hung up, most likely heading to her parents' place. About an hour later, Olivia showed up, demanding, "Where is Alexander?" The moment she entered the living room, she was speechless. That was to be expected because there we all were. Olivia's parents, us, Victoria, and even James. "Why is everyone here?" Olivia seemed confused. Then Olivia's parents spoke up. "You really are beyond help. Mom, what's going on all of a sudden? Word is you've been dropping off Alexander at James's parents' way too often, haven't you?" "Well, I've been busy with work, so it's just on weekends," Olivia tried to excuse herself. That's no excuse, dropping him off every single weekend. Olivia's parents chided. I also heard from James's mother that you've been leaving him there on weekdays too. Olivia's mother and father confronted her like this. Feeling cornered by her own parents, Olivia defended herself. I'm working, you know. It's okay for me to get a little support. Victoria and John are free anyway, Olivia reasoned. James chimed in to counter Olivia's justification. I've been transferring you enough money, haven't I? You even said you needed more, so now I'm sending you $3,000 a month for living expenses, and you're saying that's not enough? Yes, that's right. $3,000 is not enough. Olivia became increasingly defiant. Any reasonable person would think you could live quite comfortably with $3,000 a month for living expenses when it's just you and a small child, James retorted. That's when Victoria sided with Olivia. Why don't you just stop lying? Victoria challenged. What? I'm not lying. You're not really working, are you? Olivia's eyes widened at Victoria's words. I am working. Olivia started to panic under Victoria's scrutiny. Victoria then pulled out an envelope and spread its contents on the table. I hate to say this in front of your parents, but I've had my suspicions about you, so I had an investigation done. It turns out you've been having an affair. You met him often on the weekends, and you left Alexander with us even on weekdays when you could manage the time. Victoria began laying out photos as proof of the affair. Stop. Don't display those pictures like that. Frantic, Olivia tried to hide the pictures. What you've done is a betrayal to all of us, James, who's been working hard on business trips, Sophia and John, who've been caring for Alexander, and most of all, you've betrayed Alexander. Victoria continued, revealing the evidence. It seemed Olivia finally realized the gravity of her actions. Olivia broke down and apologized deeply in front of us. I'm really sorry. Can you find it in your hearts to forgive me? Olivia kept apologizing, but some things can't be fixed that easily. James walked up to Olivia and handed her a piece of paper. These are divorce papers. Let's end our relationship. I don't want a divorce. Shouldn't have had an affair then, James replied sternly. I'm ashamed to say you're my daughter. Stop causing trouble and just agree to the divorce. No way, Olivia protested, but no one in the room was on her side. Eventually, Olivia signed the divorce papers, sealing the end of her marriage with James. James was granted custody of their child. He spoke to his company about the situation and decided to return to the U.S. sooner than planned. Although this cost him a potential promotion, James said life with Alexander is more important, and they're now living together in an apartment near our family home. As for Olivia, she's been sued for alimony by James and her affair partner. She was also disowned by her parents and is working desperately to pay off her monthly installments. Olivia wanted to see Alexander, but he refused. Apparently, Olivia was too absorbed in her phone to take care of him and often neglected his basic needs. Who would want to be involved with someone like that? Turns out Olivia's affair partner was also married, and now his wife is suing her as well. Even worse, he decided not to divorce, leaving Olivia with massive debt and losing everything: her child, James, and her parents. From now on, she'll live a lonely life with most of her earnings going toward alimony payment. But she brought it all on herself. It's the punishment she deserves for her betrayal. Meanwhile, John and I are living happily with Victoria, and since Alexander and James live nearby, we regularly go out for meals or have barbecues in our in-laws' backyard, enjoying quality family time. I plan to continue cherishing this family I love so much and live out my days in happiness.
When Walter and I visited my husband's parents, his mom came to pick us up from the airport. She said I couldn't ride in the car, so I had to walk home. I felt really upset about this, especially because it's a long 3-hour walk. even though I'm strong. I was almost in tears, but thankfully someone helped me out. In the end, it was my mother-in-law who felt sorry for what she did. My name is Jennifer, and I'm 30 years old. I met my husband, Walter, when we were both in college. We love mountain climbing. Walter is 2 years younger than me, and he's really good-looking and popular. When he asked me out, I couldn't believe it, but he says he likes how I tackle challenges without complaining. Walter has a good job at a big company and earns a lot of money. We've been happily married since college, but there's something that bothers me. During dinner, Walter always gets calls from his mom and leaves to talk to her in his room. Walter's mom calls him often, about once every 2 days. She really loves her son, and Walter is very sweet to her, which makes me wonder if he's too attached to his mom. But since she raised him well, I feel like I should respect her too. However, it seems like our feelings toward each other are different. It started before we got married when we went to visit my husband's parents. Walter's mom didn't seem happy when she found out I'm 2 years older than him and almost 30. She seemed unhappy throughout our visit, but Walter's dad didn't mind. He said age doesn't matter and that I seem like a reliable person who's perfect for Walter, who has his weaker moments. But that made Walter's mom even more upset. Walter's mom didn't want to argue with his dad directly, so she decided to make things difficult for me without him noticing. Sometimes she'd say things like, "Oh dear, I'm sorry, Jennifer, but the snacks I gave you are bad. Let me get you something else." When she was being mean on purpose, she'd widen her eyes, snort, and twist her lips. I felt like I was studying her behavior like a scientist studying animals. "It's all right, I can eat it." I smiled and cut off the spoiled part of the dried fruit and ate the rest. Back from my mountain club days, I learned to make do with whatever food was available. Walter's dad and Walter himself chuckled, saying, "That's just like Jennifer," and we all laughed. But then Walter's dad told his mom not to serve me something like that again. And the mood stayed light, but I wasn't paying enough attention. "I'm sorry," I said, still laughing, but I caught her quick, sharp glance and heard her tongue click disapprovingly. There were other times, like when she showed off souvenirs from Italy. She gave Walter a nice tie, but for me, it was a cheap t-shirt with a fake logo. "Come on, try on the tie, Jennifer. You too, try on the shirt," she said, with that same expression on her face. I realized it was another jab at me. No thanks. I don't wear ties with casual clothes, and I'm not feeling like trying on a shirt right now, I said, trying to keep the mood light with a smile, but inside, I was really frustrated. After that, I only used that t-shirt for things like gardening in the summer or as a funny prop in photos with my friends. I couldn't stand even looking at it. These little mean acts were subtle, so only I could really tell what was going on. When I tried talking to Walter about it, he'd just brush it off, saying, "Mom's a bit odd, forgive her." But the constant negativity was wearing me down. We live about an hour's drive from my in-laws, so it was always hanging over us that we could visit them whenever. That thought made me feel down. Then, out of the blue, Walter told me, "Jennifer, I've got some sudden news. I'm being transferred. It starts next month, so get ready." Walter was being moved for work. He said sorry, but secretly I felt relieved. It gave us a reason to keep our distance from my in-laws. "Okay, don't worry. I'll handle the preparations. I'll even ask my family for help." I happily went ahead with the moving preparations. Finally, I thought I could escape from my mother-in-law's constant teasing. Although I was nervous about starting a new life, most of my excitement came from the thought of getting away from her. Once the move was done, I hoped I could put some distance between us, but then the phone rang. It was my mother-in-law, asking where I'd been and hinting that I might be ignoring her son to spend time with my own parents. I wanted to let out a big sigh, but I stayed calm and explained that I was just busy at the store and wanted to make sure Walter had good meals in our new home. Her calls started coming more often, every 2 days. Even though we were seeing each other less, we were talking more. But most of the time, it was just her making little digs at me. She'd say things like, "My son is sensitive." I wonder if someone as tough as Jennifer can understand him. His high school girlfriend was so delicate, but now his tastes have changed, haven't they? It was always stuff meant to make me feel uncomfortable. It seems like Walter's mom doesn't have another way to deal with her stress. And unfortunately, I became the target for it. It felt like I was just a dumping ground for her frustrations. What hurt the most were her comments about having children. She'd say things like, "Jennifer, you're already 30. Can you even have a normal child being older than my son?" It was shocking to hear such outdated and hurtful remarks, especially since I'd been worrying about that myself lately. I couldn't help but cry after hanging up the phone. I wondered what she really thought of me. Did she believe that her words wouldn't hurt me? As I kept giving neutral answers to avoid confrontation, maybe she got bored of trying to bully me, and the calls started to decrease. It was a huge relief for me. Then, on New Year's Day the next year, my husband and I went to visit my in-laws. They were picking us up from the airport. Walter's dad greeted us warmly, which was a relief because I was really anxious about seeing his mom. His friendliness made me feel better. We exchanged New Year's greetings, and despite my worries, it seemed like things might be okay. We exchanged New Year's greetings, but my mother-in-law didn't even glance at me. Maybe she was upset about my distant response to her constant calls. Our relationship was strained, and I was trying to figure out how to handle it. "Were you tired from the trip? How about we grab a coffee at the airport cafe?" Walter's dad suggested, oblivious to the tension between his wife and me. "Sounds good. Isn't there a cafe on the second floor?" Walter replied cheerfully, and we made our way to a cafe inside the airport. "Should I drive us home?" Walter offered. "No, I'm still comfortable driving," his mother replied curtly. While the men chatted away, my mother-in-law and I sat in silence. "Excuse me, I need to use the restroom," I said after placing my order, and I stood up from the table. "Oh, I think I'll go too," my mother-in-law said, getting up to follow me. I had a sinking feeling about this. As we approached the entrance to the women's restroom, my mother-in-law, walking behind me, suddenly said, "Since you can't ride in the car, why don't you just walk back?" Confused by her words, I turned to look at her, and there it was again, that same expression on her face. "We're going back as a family of 3. You're a stranger here, aren't you?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Walk back from here to my in-laws' house? How far was that? And to call her son's wife a stranger. I stood there, frozen in shock, as my mother-in-law kept hurling words at me. "I've been kind enough to call you often, but you always respond so coldly. Living near your parents' house has made you arrogant. I don't even want to think of you as my daughter-in-law. You're just a stranger, a complete stranger." Her voice was getting louder. I was stunned, but I didn't want to make a scene in public, so I replied quietly, "Yes, I understand." Feeling too embarrassed to go back to where Walter and his dad were, I headed towards the airport exit, feeling heavy-hearted. Even though she told me to walk back, this was an airport, surely there were taxis or buses. I could take one as far as possible and then walk the rest of the way. But more than that, I was worried about how I would face my in-laws after this incident and how I would spend the next few days with them. For now, I searched for transportation to my in-laws' house on my phone. There was a bus leaving in just 10 minutes, but it wouldn't take me directly there. From where it dropped me off, I'd have to walk. It might take about 3 hours in total. 3 hours. I could manage that with my legs trained from mountain climbing. But there's a big difference between walking for fun and being forced to walk because of harassment. Tears filled my eyes. Was it really my fault? Maybe if I had been nicer on the phone, even after hearing those hurtful things, none of this would have happened. Lost in these thoughts as I walked, I suddenly felt a tap on my shoulder from behind. "Jennifer, why are you walking here?" It was Walter's dad. "Didn't my wife say something to you at the restroom?" "I was on my way there too, and I saw you and my wife talking, and then you started to leave, so I followed you." Looking at his kind face, the tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over, running down my cheeks. "Jennifer, what's going on?" he asked with concern. I made up my mind to tell Walter's dad the truth. So I shared with him exactly what his wife had said, and he became angrier than I'd ever seen him. Oh my, did she really say that to my son's wife? Then, to my surprise, he said something unexpected. "I'll walk with you, Jennifer." With that, he stepped in front of me and began walking. Father-in-law? Don't worry. I used to enjoy mountain climbing, and I went on many trips with Walter when he was little. A 3-hour walk one way is nothing. Sure enough, Walter's dad walked with a steady stride, not at all like someone in their 60s. "Come on, let's go." We didn't tell Walter we were leaving. Is that okay? I suddenly remembered that I hadn't informed Walter about our departure. Walter will be alright. She'll probably convince him to wait. I'll give him a call. With that, Walter's dad took out his phone. He was sending a text to Walter's mom. He let her know that he was walking back with me and that the car keys were in his bag. While we waited for the bus, Walter's dad's phone rang. He answered, and I could tell from his tone that he was trying to control his anger. It must have been Walter's mom on the other end. "I heard what you said to Jennifer. If you're going to talk like that, then I won't ride in the car either." I could hear Walter's mom's panicked voice shouting from the other end. "That's not true. She said she wanted to walk for exercise." I was more bewildered than anything. "We'll discuss this when we get home," Walter's dad said firmly as he hung up and pocketed his phone. Maybe because Walter's dad's phone was busy, mine started ringing next. It was definitely Walter's mom. Walter's dad and I exchanged a glance. What could she want now? To tell us to get in the car? I definitely wasn't going to pick up, so I decided to ignore it too. Father-in-law and I quietly boarded the bus and continued our walk after getting off. "This way is a shortcut. There's a slope here for a while, but let's do our best," he said, occasionally offering advice as we walked. It almost felt like we were climbing a mountain together, but I hadn't planned on walking so much today, and I was just wearing regular boots. Father-in-law had on leather shoes. This is going to be tough on our feet, I thought to myself, but I only asked once. Father-in-law, are your feet okay? Won't walking for a long time in those shoes hurt them?" He glanced at my feet and squinted. "Looks like we're in the same boat. It's unbelievable that she would make a woman walk so far in those shoes." We both thought about calling a taxi, but neither of us said anything, wanting to defy Walter's mom. "But Jennifer, you're strong. You're walking such a long distance without complaining. I bet that's what attracted Walter to you," he said, making me feel a little better. After a long walk, we kept going, stopping at a grocery store to buy drinks from vending machines to stay hydrated. About 3 hours later, as the sun started to set, we finally reached my in-laws' house. Their car was parked out front. Mother-in-law and Walter must be inside. "We're back," Father-in-law announced as he opened the front door, and Walter rushed over. "Jennifer, I was so worried." "What happened? Why did you suddenly decide to walk back for exercise? Did Mom say something?" "No, that's not it. Mom told Jennifer to walk back," Father-in-law explained, looking understandably exhausted as he took a seat near the entrance. Mother-in-law, who had just come out of the living room, looked shocked and pale. "No, that's not true. It's not what happened. It seems there's been a misunderstanding." "What misunderstanding?" I couldn't stay silent any longer. "You said, since you can't ride in the car, why don't you walk back?" "Didn't you?" I stated plainly. I despise lying, and this situation reminded me of my mountain climbing club days. A 3-hour walk one way was good exercise. Walter glanced at his mother. "He knows I'm not the type to lie," I added. The eyes of Walter, his father, and I were all fixed on mother-in-law. "What, you believe this woman over me? You're choosing her over your family? She's just a stranger, isn't she?" Mother-in-law screamed. "So I wasn't allowed in the car because I'm a stranger," I said quietly. "Mom, I can't believe you would say something like that. Jennifer is an important part of my family. I wanted you to feel the same way," Walter said, his fist clenched, his hand trembling with anger. "If you're going to treat Jennifer like this, I'm done with you, Mom. I won't answer your calls anymore. Don't contact Jennifer either," Walter declared, taking my hand firmly. "Let's go." "Walter, wait," but Walter slammed the door shut, and without a backward glance, he took my hand and we started walking. A year later. "Hey Jennifer, Walter, come check out this view. It's amazing up here." Walter, his father, and I were out mountain climbing together. 6 months after the New Year incident, Walter got a transfer and we moved back to our old neighborhood. After what happened at the New Year celebration, Walter's dad decided to get a divorce and move closer to our house. Climbing together on weekends has become a regular thing for us. "Shall we have lunch here?" At the summit, we eagerly began preparing our meal. As we worked, Father-in-law started talking. Mom went on a spending spree after the divorce. Even though the property was divided fairly, it seemed she's already having financial troubles. Maybe she was feeling lonely. The divorce was tough, with lots of crying and screaming. Maybe it's best for both of us to have some distance now. She needs to expand her world too. Otherwise, she's the type to take out her stress on those close to her. I listened quietly to their conversation. I'll focus on my own world so I don't have to unload my stress onto others. Looking out at the view from the mountain with my dear family, I made that promise to myself. I found out I have a serious sickness called leukemia, and the doctors say I need to stay in the hospital for a long time to get better. But when I told my family, they turned their backs on me, saying I deserved it. That's when it hit me. They don't really care about me. When I said I wanted to stop being part of their lives, they were happy about it, but they haven't realized yet how much they rely on me. My name is Sally, and I'm a stay-at-home mom in my 40s. My husband Michael and I have been married for almost 50 years. We have a daughter named Mia who just started middle school. Right now, I live with Michael, Mia, and my mother-in-law. Michael's mom raised him by herself after her divorce when he was young. Maybe she spoiled him too much because he's pretty selfish. Living with my mother-in-law made me see a side of my husband I hadn't noticed before we got married. When my husband found out I was going to have a baby, he was really happy. He couldn't believe it at first, but then he thanked me and said we would face any challenges together. I promised to do my best. But that joy didn't last long. When we found out we were having a girl during a checkup, my mother-in-law said something really hurtful to me. She said, "You never cook meat, do you?" I tried to explain that I cook a balanced diet, but she wouldn't listen. She even said that maybe the reason the baby was a girl was because I didn't eat meat. I was shocked and hurt. She kept saying we only needed boys and that having a granddaughter was the worst thing. She even called me useless. I tried to tell myself that as long as the baby was healthy, it shouldn't matter if it was a boy or a girl. But as time went on, my hopes were crushed. My husband started acting distant too, maybe because he was listening to my mother-in-law. He began treating me differently, and it hurt. "Michael, do you want to go shopping for baby stuff when you're off next?" "Do I have to? It's our baby, right?" "I want us to pick things out together." "Fine, but let's stick to the basics. Babies cost a lot, and we need to save." "Then buy what you want with your own money." I had minimal income during maternity leave. I have to save for our child's future and cover clinic bills and baby expenses. I had to go along with what Michael and my mother-in-law said and only get the necessary baby stuff. I worried they wouldn't love our daughter when she arrived. But after Mia was born, Michael and my mother-in-law adored her. They loved her even more than I expected, so I stopped worrying. I planned to focus on parenting for a while. But when Mia turned 2, Michael told me to go back to work. I thought it would be okay since my mother-in-law loved Mia too. But when I returned to work, both my mother-in-law and Michael showered even more love on Mia. Michael started spoiling her, just like my mother-in-law had spoiled him. I tried to teach Mia right from wrong with love, but it seemed she didn't see it that way. Before I knew it, Mia didn't like me and preferred to be with my husband and mother-in-law. "Hey Mia, it's time for kindergarten. Let's go together." "I don't want to go with Mommy. I want Grandma." "Mia, Mommy has to work too. Let's go to kindergarten together, okay?" "I hate Mommy. I love Daddy and Grandma." "Mia, please don't say that." "No, Mommy, just go away." Mia's words were really hurting my feelings. My mental health was suffering because of it. But my husband and mother-in-law didn't try to stop her. Instead, they looked at me like I deserved it. These tough times continued for about 10 years. Even in middle school, Mia hasn't changed. She avoids me and sticks to my husband and mother-in-law. And because of that, she's become uncontrollable. She screams and breaks things when she doesn't get her way. When I try to discipline her, she yells back at me. "Mia, can we talk? Did you take money from my wallet?" "Yeah." "So what? You're my mom. You can give me money, right?" "Taking without asking is wrong. Please give it back." "No way. It's your fault for not getting me the Gucci wallet. I want it for my birthday. You're only in middle school. You don't need expensive things yet. I can get them when you're older." "I want it now. Why don't you understand, you old hack?" "Mia, don't talk like that. You're so annoying, Grandma. Mom is being mean to me." When I scold her, Mia turns to my mother-in-law for help. And my mother-in-law sides with her, blaming me too. "What's wrong, Mia? Did Mom upset you again?" Listen, Grandma, she won't get me the Gucci wallet for my birthday, and she won't give me money either. Can you believe it? That's not fair. Your mom is being stingy. Grandma will get you the wallet next time, okay? Yay, thank you, Grandma. You're welcome. I love you, Grandma. Mia happily hugged my mother-in-law. Branded stuff is too much for her age, I thought. I disagreed with my mother-in-law. Wait, Mom, Mia is still in middle school. Shouldn't we hold off on buying her expensive things? I suggested. But maybe not yet. You're so stingy. I feel sorry for Mia having you as her mom, my mother-in-law snapped back. Every day, my mother-in-law spoiled Mia, buying her whatever she wanted. My husband did the same, filling our house with expensive stuff Mia barely used. Besides Mia's issues, there was another problem in our house. My mother-in-law's spending. I noticed she kept buying strange rings and bracelets. When I asked, she said a friend recommended them, but I suspected it was an MLM scheme. I wondered where she got the money since she was always buying things for Mia. Turns out, she was borrowing from banks. When I confronted her, she brushed it off, saying it wasn't my concern. I grew to hate dealing with family problems, so I threw myself into work, often working late. My husband and mother-in-law criticized me, but I didn't care. I just didn't want to be home. Then one day, I collapsed at work. Tests revealed I had leukemia, likely brought on by stress. I needed long-term treatment, so I was hospitalized. I called my mother-in-law from the hospital. I'm sorry to bother you, but I collapsed at work. I've been diagnosed with leukemia, and I need to stay in the hospital. You have leukemia? I hoped she'd be at least a little concerned about my illness. But that hope quickly faded. It's a good thing you finally got seriously sick. I was shocked by my mother-in-law's response. What? What are you saying? I asked. I've been annoyed with you every day. This serves you right, she said callously. That's a horrible thing to say. Hold on, let me talk to Mia. I asked to speak to Mia and my mother-in-law handed her the phone. What? Mia's response was something I never expected. Mom, are you sick? She asked. I'm sorry, Mia. I have to stay in the hospital for a while, I explained. Mia's reply crushed me even more. I'm actually glad. It's better without you bothering us. You're always mean to me. That's why you got sick. You deserve it. Are you serious right now? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's incredibly cruel. Everyone would be happier if I stayed sick. I have to tell Dad about this, I said to Mia before she hung up the phone. In that moment, I felt like giving up on my family. I had reached my breaking point. I decided I would be the one to cut ties with them. Mia was my daughter, but I endured so much pain to bring her into this world. I had hoped to raise her to be a good person, but her behavior was a combination of her innate personality and how my husband and mother-in-law raised her. Some might find it unthinkable for a parent to walk away from their child, but despite our blood connection, I couldn't forgive their behavior any longer. I called my parents and asked them to bring clothes because neither my husband, mother-in-law, nor Mia had visited me during my hospital stay. Months later, after successful treatment and full recovery, instead of returning to the house I shared with my husband, I returned to my parents' house and sought advice from a lawyer about getting a divorce. My mother-in-law and Mia agreed right away. Michael was hesitant at first, concerned about public perception, but eventually agreed under pressure from my mother-in-law and Mia. Since he cooperated, I was able to get a divorce and claim compensation. About 7 years passed. I moved out of my parents' house and lived near my workplace, healthy and energetic. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from Michael. His voice sounded exhausted, and he quickly jumped into his problem. Hello, Sally, can you come back? What? Why all of a sudden? Things are tough for me right now. What do you mean? My mother, she's in a huge amount of debt. Michael had just found out about my mother-in-law's debt and reached out to me for help. The debt, which had been ignored for so long, had grown to a significant sum, and my mother-in-law could no longer keep it hidden from Michael. To my ex-husband's anxious plea, I replied calmly, You're only noticing now. She's been in debt since I was there, from way back. It seems she got caught up in an MLM scheme. All the money she spent on spoiling Mia was borrowed from banks. I can't believe it. I had no clue. I tried to warn your mother several times, and I even tried talking to you about it. But every time, you just brushed it off. But not telling me about the debt is terrible, isn't it? If I had known earlier. Don't say that now. After all, I was in the hospital, and none of you even visited me once, remember? I'm sorry for that. Just help me out this once. What are you talking about? I snapped, losing my patience. My emotions boiled over, and I found myself shouting at Michael. Do you think you can just apologize and everything will be okay? When I was sick and needed help, you abandoned me. I regret ever marrying you. My anger subsided, replaced by a sense of release. I had finally let out everything I'd been holding in. You should end up in debt like your mother and suffer for once. Please, calm down. I'll apologize. Shut up. It's disgusting to start relying on your divorced ex-wife now. In the background, I could hear Mia's voice. Then she took over the phone, sounding sad. Mom, Grandma's in trouble because of her debts. Please help us. It's not my problem. Don't ask me for help. Mia didn't give up, despite my quiet refusal. Dad's struggling to repay Grandma's debts. I might not be able to afford college tuition and might have to drop out. Is that okay? So, Mom, why are you acting like this is someone else's problem? Your own daughter is in trouble. Daughter? Who? Mia's words made me chuckle. Just as she faced trouble, she emphasized she was my daughter, even though she never called herself that before. What's so funny? Michael asked. I was just thinking about how you suddenly claim to be my daughter when you're in trouble, after calling me names all this time. That's not fair. I'm your biological daughter who's in trouble, you know. But I don't have a daughter. What? No, Mom. I made that decision 7 years ago when I was hospitalized. I don't need a family like you anymore. We're divorced, so we're just strangers now, okay? Mom, please don't say that. Stop. Don't call me Mom because I'm not your mother. You should live happily with your father and grandmother who's in debt. Don't ever contact me again. You're just a burden in my life. With that, I ended the call and blocked their numbers to ensure they couldn't reach me again. After that, I heard that my ex-husband and mother-in-law were working tirelessly to repay their debts. They sold everything they owned, but it wasn't enough. They were struggling to make ends meet and even struggled to eat properly. My daughter couldn't afford her tuition and had to drop out of college. The expensive items she had were sold to pay off debts, leaving her with nothing. It seems even she is working to repay her grandmother's debts. It's heartbreaking to see my daughter facing such hardships compared to her peers. They really are foolish and helpless. They brought this upon themselves. As for me, I've purchased an apartment close to my workplace. I intend to invite my parents and live peacefully as a family of 3. From now on, I want to cherish each day with my true family and live happily.
After not seeing him for a month, John just thrust a divorce lawyer's business card at me without even asking, "Are you okay? Or how are you feeling divorcing a wife who doesn't work? Pay me $1,000 a month as alimony. Sounds good. Take care." John chuckled as he said this, standing beside him. Emily was wrapping her arm around his, wearing a similar smug expression. "Fine, let's divorce then." I said it so casually that John seemed a bit surprised, but he quickly shared his smile with Emily. Good thing John isn't much of a thinker. It makes my plan easier to execute. After the divorce papers got approved, I decided to start my revenge plan on both of them. I will make them cry as a celebration of my recovery. My name is Sarah Wolf. I'm a 47-year-old illustrator. I'd also work as a children's book author. I just love drawing. I have 2 childhood friends, John and Emily. They're important friends to me, and John is also my husband. It all started when John asked me out as I was heading to a different college after high school. I was surprised. I thought he was into Emily, but I couldn't say no to a confession from John, whom I had secretly liked. After some thought and consultation with Emily, I accepted John's proposal. Emily's behavior had been a bit problematic since teens, but she was still a dear friend to both John and me. However, Emily had a tendency to snatch other people's boyfriends and then dump them once they became obsessed with her. causing problems time and again. Her parents were concerned, so John and I often spent time with her to watch over her. John and I got married when we were 25, 4 years later. Emily brought her fiancé into our lives. His name was George, a professional working for a top-tier company. Nice to meet you, Sarah and John. I've heard so much about you. Looking forward to our future together. George was very polite, and we all got along immediately. We would get together during holidays and vacations, taking trips or going on long train rides to enjoy some drinks. However, things started falling apart after Emily got pregnant 2 years into her marriage. John and I originally had many siblings, so there was no worry about an heir. So we decided we didn't need children. Both of us loved kids, but weren't keen on actively caring for them. Besides, we loved our freedom to travel and enjoy drinks. We often found it heartwarming to see families with children, but it was never more or less than that. When Emily announced her pregnancy, John's attitude started to change. He quit smoking because Emily said she couldn't stand the smell, and even offered to drive her to doctor's appointments using his vacation days. I warned him, "George might get upset if you're always with Emily." But John argued back, "You have work, don't you? She's our childhood friend, and she's reaching out for help. You're heartless." I said, "I've been buying things and helping where I can, but going with her to the obstetrician is crossing the line." When I said that, John frowned, and then he glared at me. "Why?" "Because Emily wants it, right? She says she's anxious about the checkup. I can't just let her go alone if she's anxious." All the more reason for George to go with her, right? If you go with her every time, it's almost like you're the father of the baby in her belly. John jealous? You're not going to get pregnant anyway, so what's the problem? He didn't take my concerns seriously, and instead started to snap, saying I was being annoying. We had hardly ever had a fight during our marriage, but things changed when Emily got pregnant. Our arguments increased, and that didn't change even after Emily gave birth. In fact, John started spending even more time with Emily and their child, Emma. But when Emma was 6, an incident occurred. It had to do with the attendees of Emma's graduation ceremonies. The day before the graduation, John suddenly started rummaging through the closet. "John, what are you doing? Have a meeting tomorrow." John's workplace had a casual dress code, but there was a rule to wear a suit during client meetings, so he always kept a few suits ready. But they were all thrown on the bed now. No, just trying to decide what to wear for the graduation ceremony. "What? You're seriously thinking of attending the graduation?" "Yeah, George can't make it. Emily asked me." "Wait, that's absurd. No matter how you look at it." I inadvertently raised my voice in denial. Immediately, John's face turned sour. I knew he occasionally picked Emma up from kindergarten, and I had done so myself when asked, yet it was nonsensical for a childhood friend who wasn't even a biological parent to attend a graduation ceremony. "What? You still doubt me and Emily? I'm disappointed that you can't even help out." "That's not the point." "Point anyway. I'm attending the graduation tomorrow, so iron a shirt properly." John said that and abruptly ended the conversation, leaving me behind and going to the bedroom. I had no choice but to call Emily. "Hello, Emily. About tomorrow." Sorry about tomorrow. I'm borrowing John." "But won't George be upset about the graduation attendance, Sarah?" "What are you talking about?" "Obviously, I haven't told George that the graduation is tomorrow. I'll tell him after the ceremony." I was shocked to learn that George didn't know about the graduation schedule. Upon further questioning, it seemed that Emily hadn't informed George about any of the kindergarten events so far, and John had been acting as the father at the kindergarten, which made me dizzy with its selfishness. "Wait a minute, Emily. Isn't that extremely unreasonable? It's disrespectful to George, and just because he's a childhood friend, eh? What's wrong?" "Sarah, you're scary. Well, see you tomorrow." "Wait, Emily." I was trembling with anger. at Emily, who unilaterally hung up the phone. Still, in the end, I ironed a shirt, prepared a tie, and the next morning saw John off to Emma's graduation ceremony. Since then, Emily and John started going out more frequently, from once a month to once a week, and then to 3 times a week. Eventually, even George seemed to have some suspicions, and one day, while John and Emily were out, he visited our house alone. "I'm sorry for visiting you late at night. There's something that's been bothering me." "Is it about the two of them?" "Yes, I would like you to take a look at this." George showed me the GPS history he had installed in Emily's car. It showed that she had been staying at a hotel 3 times a week. All of those days, she was out with John, and just by looking at George's face, I understood what that meant. "What do you want to do, George?" "I want to take revenge on those two." "Me too. I can't forgive them for betraying us after all this time." We started planning our revenge on them secretly. First, I started by increasing my income because I had been saving by doing housework and taking care of Emma. My income had drastically decreased. George switched to working from home. And when Emily and John would go out, he would bring Emma to my house, and we would take care of her together. Neither Emily nor John realized that we knew about their relationship, and we were able to gather solid evidence. Once we had collected enough evidence and were ready to take our revenge, we discovered a shocking truth about Emma. George and I struggled with the decision, but we both agreed that we didn't want to hurt young Emma, so we decided to wait until she was an adult to take our revenge. However, even though we decided to endure for 10 years, I was struck with a serious illness. I needed long-term hospitalization, and even at best, I wouldn't be discharged for at least 2 years. Although I could work from the hospital room, it was certain that I would have to reduce my workload. After informing George about the situation, I consulted John. However, John's reaction was no different from when we were making small talk. "I'll visit you once in a while." I felt that John no longer had any affection for me, as he didn't even ask about my condition or the name of the disease. In reality, John only visited once a month or once every 2 months, and after Emma's 15th birthday, she started acting strangely. Although she used to visit me almost every day right after I was hospitalized, she became distant after her 15th birthday. However, neither George nor I could figure out why, and we were puzzled. Even when we asked Emma, she just said, "Don't worry about it." However, we ended up learning the reason from John, who rarely showed up. "Hey, it's been a while." "Yeah, it has." John, who had completely transformed into a flashy appearance, walked in without even knocking. After not seeing him for a month, John just thrust a divorce lawyer's business card at me without even asking, "Are you okay?" or "How are you feeling divorcing a wife who doesn't work?" "Pay me $1,000 a month as alimony. That's the deal. So take care," John said, grinning from ear to ear. Beside him, Emily wrapped her arms around John's with a similar expression on her face. "Fine, let's divorce then," I casually agreed, which seemed to surprise John for a moment, but he quickly exchanged smiles with Emily. It was good that John wasn't the type to think too deeply. That's why my plan worked so well. After receiving a notification that the divorce was finalized from John, I decided to start my revenge plan against the two of them. I will make them cry as a celebration of my recovery. I promptly started to take action. First, I contacted George to transfer hospitals. Then I informed my lawyer that they would be mediating between the two parties from now on. George also began to act at the same time. He moved near my new hospital with Emma, and he started to visit me frequently. Emma still had a gloomy expression, but I was happy that she came to see me every day. Most of my belongings were already in the hospital room, so I told John to dispose of the rest. I didn't want to bring anything that the two of them might have touched into my new life. Once the hospital transfer and George and Emma's move settled down, I received a call from John. I had only left my seat for a few minutes, but my smartphone already showed 30 missed calls. I answered the phone, feeling exasperated. What? Hey, what the hell is going on? I could hear the voice of a troubled real estate agent behind John's panicked voice. I also heard Emily yelling, which made me feel sick. What do you mean? What's going on? It's obviously about the house. Why'd we have to move out? John shouted at me as if it wasn't his fault at all. I replied to him coolly, obviously because that's my house. Huh. John seemed to have completely forgotten. But the truth was the house we lived in was a room I rented as a workspace. When I started to make a living as a freelancer, at that time, I didn't have enough income to maintain 2 houses, and John didn't have enough income to live alone. So he ended up moving into my place. Therefore, Jan had never paid the rent or utility bills for that room. Although I received some money from him for living expenses, it wasn't enough to maintain the place. Unfortunately, that room was already canceled. It was far from the hospital I transferred to, so I had processed the cancellation the day after submitting the divorce papers. I didn't inform him because the real estate agent who knew the situation said they would contact him. George and Emma suddenly disappeared, and our house was sold. What are we going to do about our new house? I don't know. Maybe stay in a business hotel for now. As I turned on the speaker and started working, John yelled in frustration, "Don't screw with me." However, he seemed to remember something and started speaking in a more soothing tone. Well, whatever. When will you transfer the money? We're running low on cash. What are you talking about? Huh? Don't mess around. I told you to pay $1,000, didn't I? Oh, I don't recall agreeing to that. My nonchalant response was met with incoherent screaming from John on the other end of the phone. Apparently, he thought he could get money from me and had been squandering it. Even if he had $1,000 left, how did he plan to get by for the rest of the month? Hey, don't just stay silent. Say something. There's really nothing to talk about. My retort left John momentarily dumbfounded, but he soon started yelling again, growing increasingly annoyed. I addressed John in as cheerful a tone as I could muster. Anyway, we're basically strangers now, so please don't contact me anymore. You'll hear from my lawyer. Huh? Lawyer? Hey, wait a minute. I hung up without listening to John's response. He tried calling back several times, but I ignored it, and eventually the calls stopped. However, angry that I didn't answer, John started ignoring calls from my lawyer. He certainly had a childish side, but I never imagined he'd be the kind of person who didn't mind causing trouble for others. I sighed deeply at John's selfishness. A few months later, after a temporary discharge from the hospital, I visited John's parents' house. In front of me were John and Emily, both looking small and trembling. You telling my parents is a low blow. Oh, I just reported that we got divorced. Jan glared at me in response to my answer, but he shrank back under his father's stern gaze. Actually, I had a great relationship with my in-laws, even visiting and dining with them when John wasn't around. Despite being so well-loved, I felt it was wrong not to share the details of our divorce. So I went to visit them. Is it true that you're remarrying Emily? Yes, it's true. True. Emily, Emma, and are going to start over as a family. What are you talking about? Your only family is Sarah. She's not my family anymore. John's words made his father frown with a look that seemed to say, "Give me a break." John shook his head a few times, then handed me a piece of paper. It was a bill from a nearby luxury hotel. What's this? It's the bill from the hotel we stayed at. John, acting as if it was obvious, pointed at the bill on the table, then suddenly collapsed. Oh, what the heck, Mom? I didn't raise you to be like this. My mother-in-law, gasping for breath, was met with a look of disbelief from John. Next to him, Emily wore the same expression. Why are you so angry? It's just that the family is changing because I'm getting married. Plus, you'll have a grandchild, a blood-related one at that. Aren't you happy? You two didn't. My mother-in-law, looking as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing, glanced at Emily, then turned her gaze to me. Both my in-laws understood that I didn't want children and still treated me as their own daughter. Of course, they treated Emily, my childhood friend, similarly. But there was always a boundary between a daughter-in-law and a friend. I remembered Emily often complaining about that. So I was certain my mother-in-law wouldn't be happy about this situation, and Emily should have known it too. You dote on Emma, right? It'll be your grandchild, so you'll be happy, right? It's because she's a child I've known since she was little. Oh, but half of her blood is from John, right? Even after all this, Emily, showing no sign of remorse and acting as if she couldn't understand the problem, gave me goosebumps. At that moment, someone who had been silent until now spoke up. Enough already. It's disgusting, huh? Emma, who had been playing with her smartphone in the corner of the room, spoke to Emily without looking up. The room fell into a stunned silence. My dad is the only one I consider my father, whether we're related by blood or not. He's the only one. But you know, John has always been the one to attend your school events. I heard everything from Dad, how he was always informed of the event dates after they were over, how eventually even the events themselves were kept from him. But Dad always said I was his daughter, so I am his daughter, and I will never be yours. Emma glared at Emily as she said this. Then, sitting beside me, she switched to a more concerned tone. You know, when I found out about this, I thought you would hate me. But Dad said that wasn't the case, so I came here today. Emma, I love you so much. You were so kind to visit me every day while I was in the hospital. I was really happy, Sarah. Emma, perhaps relieved of her anxiety, teared up and hugged me tightly. It might indeed be a child resulting from an affair between John and Emily. Yet it's a child I've taken care of for 15 years. There's no way I don't have affection for her. Speaking of which, Emily, weren't you curious why I wasn't surprised when I found out Emma is John's daughter? Ah! Emily looked startled. Before she could speak, a new person entered the room. We knew from the start, 10 years ago actually. George suddenly appeared. Understandably so, as she had recently unilaterally demanded a divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. I was shocked when you mentioned divorce. Oh, and unfortunately, you're not divorced yet. The divorce papers are still here. Didn't you notice? What? I figured it wasn't in Emily and John's nature to confirm things. But I couldn't help but be stunned that Emily, despite the 100-day waiting period for women to remarry, hadn't noticed for months. So, Emily is still my wife, and Emma is still my daughter. Well, since there won't be a wife though. Wait, what do you mean? A 15-year-old can choose their parent. That's not true. Emma wants to be with Mom, right? Emily said that and looked at Emma. Emma frowned at Emily and held my hand. Emily was speechless at that and glared at me. Then, John suddenly burst into laughter. So that's what it is. You two are together, huh? But too bad. Isn't it impossible to live on George's salary alone? Can you stop making weird assumptions? Also, it seems George earns double the amount you think. Emily knows about it, huh? It's probably a bluff. A lol. Besides, it's impossible for you to work while dealing with your illness. You'll just die miserably somewhere. This time, I laughed at John's huge misunderstanding. John, seeing me suddenly start laughing, was getting frustrated. You didn't know about my income, did you, huh? It's probably just a bit more than a part-time job. No, it's different. My annual income is $500,000, huh? John's eyes and mouth were wide open in shock. Emily was also stunned. In fact, over the past 10 years, I had become a popular children's book author, and my income had skyrocketed from essays, interviews, and the like. Moreover, a film adaptation is planned soon, so my income is skyrocketing. Liar. Oh, do you want to see this? I said that and showed Emily my bank account screen. It clearly showed a large amount of money being deposited every month. Emily was at a loss for words when she saw it. Sarah, let's make up, huh? What are you saying? Emily was furious at John's words. Blinded by the money, I watched them blankly and then opened my mouth. Well, If you want to get married, feel free. Oh, and I'll definitely take the compensation for damages, Sarah. Wait, Sarah. Ignoring John's words, I took Emma's hand, and after saying goodbye to my in-laws, I left their house. John originally worked at my father-in-law's company, but it was revealed that he was lying about going out for sales, and he was fired. My father-in-law planned to forcibly put him on a friend's fishing boat and work him to the bone. Working on a fishing boat was tough for an indoor-loving John, and he contacted me several times. But each time, I notified my father-in-law, and eventually, the calls stopped. Emily lost custody to George and got divorced. She seemed uninterested in John, who couldn't afford luxuries and didn't seem to chase after him. She was disowned by her family and lived alone in a rundown apartment. She hadn't worked at all since getting married, and since she had always made others do things for her, she couldn't do anything herself. And there were hardly any places that would hire her as a full-time employee. Still, she had to pay for her living expenses and child support, so she worked multiple part-time jobs and barely made ends meet. After entering high school, Emma worked hard every day to study abroad and go to a prestigious university overseas. Being originally diligent, her dream is to translate my picture books and deliver them to children all over the world, which makes me happy. As for me, my picture books are selling well, and I am receiving more and more offers for anime adaptations and merchandise. My illness is also progressing well, and although I am still hospitalized, my doctor recently told me that I might be able to leave the hospital next year. And one more thing, George and Emma come to visit me every day. Actually, George recently confessed to me with remarriage in mind. I haven't given my answer yet, but I can't help but have feelings for him. He said he wants to live together when I leave the hospital. While thinking about what to answer, I work on my picture books every day, hoping for a happy future for us. I weave stories again today.
I've been sleeping with your best friend. Asher's words cut through me like a knife, shattering the illusion of our perfect life together. I stare at him, my heart pounding in my chest as the weight of his confession settles over me. 5 years of marriage, countless memories, and a friendship I cherished above all else, all tainted by this single moment of betrayal. Natalie, my closest confidant, the person I trusted with my deepest secrets, had been lying to me for God knows how long. Asher's face is a mask of cold indifference as he watches me process his words. I want a divorce, Evelyn. It's over. Anger, hot and fierce, surges through my veins. How could you do this to me? To us? We had a life together, Asher. We had plans, dreams. He scoffs, shaking his head. Plans? Dreams? You've been so focused on your career, Evelyn, that you've forgotten what it means to be a wife. I needed more than a roommate who occasionally shares my bed. His words sting, but I refuse to let him see how deeply they cut. And Natalie? How long has this been going on behind my back? Asher has the decency to look away, a flicker of shame crossing his features. A year. It started as a friendship, but it grew into something more. Something real. I laugh, a harsh, bitter sound that echoes in the stillness of our living room. Real? You call sneaking around, lying to your wife, and betraying your vows real? What about our marriage, Asher? Was that not real enough for you? He sighs, running a hand through his hair. I didn't plan for this to happen, Evelyn. But Natalie, she understands me in a way you never could. She supports my dreams, my ambitions. She doesn't make me feel guilty for wanting more out of life. And that's worth throwing away everything we've built together? Our home, our future? I can feel the hot sting of tears behind my eyes, but I blink them back, refusing to let him see me crumble. Asher looks at me, his expression a mix of pity and resignation. I'm sorry, Evelyn, but I can't live a lie anymore. I want a divorce, and I'm going to start a new life with Natalie. The finality in his words hits me like a physical blow. In an instant, my world has been turned upside down. Everything I thought I knew, revealed as nothing more than a carefully constructed facade. As Asher turns to leave, I call out, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. This isn't over, Asher. I won't let you walk away from our marriage without a fight. You and Natalie will pay for what you've done. He pauses, his hand on the doorknob, and looks back at me. Do what you need to do, Evelyn. but it won't change the fact that I've made my choice. I'm sorry it had to end this way." With that, he's gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click. I sink to the floor, my legs no longer able to support me, as the tears I've been holding back finally break free. In the silence of our once shared home, I make a vow to myself. I will uncover the truth behind their betrayal, and I will make them regret the day they chose to deceive me. I confront Asher, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. "You blame me for your infidelity? How dare you, Asher? We both had demanding careers, but I never once considered betraying our vows." Asher's eyes narrow, his voice dripping with condescension. "You were always too busy, Evelyn, too focused on your own success to notice that our marriage was crumbling. Natalie was there for me when you weren't. I supported your career, your ambitions. We made decisions together, Asher. We agreed to wait on starting a family until we were both ready." My voice rises, frustration and hurt bleeding into every word. A cruel smile plays on Asher's lips. "Well, I'm ready now. Natalie's pregnant, and I'm going to marry her. We're going to have the family I always wanted, the family you were too selfish to give me." His words hit me like a punch to the gut, stealing the air from my lungs. "Pregnant? You got her pregnant while we were still married? How could you be so reckless, so irresponsible?" Asher shrugs, his indifference a sharp contrast to the turmoil raging inside me. "It happened, Evelyn, and I'm not going to apologize for it. Natalie and I are building a future together, and I won't let you stand in our way." I clench my fists, my nails digging into my palms. "You're a liar and a cheat, Asher. You've betrayed me in the worst possible way. And for what? A woman who was willing to sleep with her best friend's husband? What kind of future can you possibly hope to build on a foundation of deceit?" He steps closer, his eyes cold and unfeeling. "The kind of future I deserve, Evelyn. One where I'm not constantly being held back by a wife who can't see beyond her own ambitions. Natalie understands me, supports me in ways you never could. And you think that justifies your actions? You think that gives you the right to destroy our marriage, to shatter the trust I placed in you?" My voice cracks, the weight of his betrayal threatening to crush me. Asher's face hardens, his words laced with venom. "I'm done living a lie, Evelyn. I'm done pretending to be happy in a marriage that's been dead for years. You can have your divorce, but don't expect me to go down without a fight. I'll make sure you regret ever trying to stand in the way of my happiness." "Happiness?" I laugh, a bitter, broken sound. "You think you'll find happiness with a woman who betrays her best friend? You're delusional, Asher, and I promise you this. I will uncover every lie, every secret, every dirty little detail of your affair. I'll make sure the world sees you for the monster you really are." He smirks, unfazed by my threats. "Do your worst, Evelyn. But remember, I'm not the only one with secrets. You're not as perfect as you'd like everyone to believe." With that, he turns and walks away, leaving me standing alone in the ruins of our once happy life. I watch him go, my heart hardening with each step he takes. I will not let him win. I will not let him destroy me. I will fight back with every ounce of strength I possess, and I will make sure he pays for his betrayal. As I stand there, the pieces of my shattered world littering the ground at my feet, I make a silent vow to myself. I will uncover the truth, no matter the cost. I will expose Asher and Natalie for the liars they are, and I will rebuild my life on my own terms. The price of their deception will be high, and I will make sure they pay it in full. I sit across from the private investigator, his face a mask of professional detachment, as he slides a manila envelope across the table. "This is what I've managed to uncover so far, Mrs. Callahan. It seems your husband has been quite generous with his mistress." I open the envelope with trembling hands, my eyes widening as I flip through the photographs and financial statements. Asher, my loving husband, had been funneling money into Natalie's bank account for months, paying for her rent, her art supplies, her lavish lifestyle. "How long has this been going on?" I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. The investigator leans back in his chair, his eyes filled with a mixture of pity and understanding. "From what I can tell, the payment started about 6 months ago, right around the time your husband started spending more late nights at the office." I nod, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. Asher's sudden distance, his increasingly cold demeanor, all signs I had foolishly ignored in my desire to believe in the sanctity of our marriage. Thank you, I say, sliding the envelope back across the table. I appreciate your discretion in this matter. He nods, rising from his seat. Of course, Mrs. Callahan. If there's anything else I can do to assist you, please don't hesitate to call. I leave the investigator's office, my mind reeling with the evidence of Asher's betrayal. But I know confronting him directly will only lead to more lies, more denials. No, I need to go straight to the source. I need to speak with Natalie. I find her at her studio, her once vibrant paintings now twisted and dark, reflecting the turmoil of her own guilty conscience. She looks up as I enter, her eyes widening in surprise and fear. "Evelyn, what are you doing here?" she asks, her voice trembling. I hold up the envelope, my eyes hard and unforgiving. "I know about the money, Natalie. I know Asher's been supporting you, paying for your life while he was still married to me." She pales, her hands twisting nervously in front of her. I can't explain, Evelyn. It's not what you think." "Really?" I laugh, a harsh, bitter sound, because it looks like my husband has been having an affair with my best friend, all while lying to my face and pretending to be the perfect devoted spouse. Natalie's eyes fill with tears, her voice breaking as she speaks. "He promised me, Evelyn. He said he was going to leave you, that we were going to start a life together. He said he loved me." I shake my head, my heart hardening with each word she speaks. "And you believed him? You thought he would actually leave his wife, his successful career, for a struggling artist who can't even support herself?" She flinches at my words, her shoulders sagging in defeat. "I know it was wrong, Evelyn. I never meant to hurt you. But Asher, he made me feel special, wanted. He said he needed me in ways you could never understand." "Needed you?" I scoff, my anger rising with each passing moment. "He needed a mistress, Natalie, someone to stroke his ego and make him feel like a man, but he never intended to leave me. He never intended to start a family with you." Her eyes widen, her hand instinctively going to her stomach. "But the baby, he said he wanted this child, that we were going to be a family." I laugh, a sound devoid of any humor. "Asher doesn't want children, Natalie. He made that clear to me from the start. He only wants what he can't have, and once he gets it, he loses interest. You're nothing more than a conquest to him, a way to prove his own virility." She crumples then, her sobs echoing off the walls of the studio. I watch her, feeling a twisted sense of satisfaction in her pain. She brought this upon herself, and now she must face the consequences. "I hope it was worth it, Natalie," I say, my voice cold and unfeeling. "I hope the price of your betrayal was worth the momentary thrill of being Asher's mistress. Because now, you'll have to live with the knowledge that you destroyed our friendship, our trust, for a man who never truly loved you." With that, I turn and walk away, leaving her to drown in her own tears and regrets. I have the evidence I need, the proof of Asher's lies and deceit, and I will use it to make sure he pays for every moment of pain he has caused me. I step into the sleek, modern office of Liam Hastings, the renowned divorce attorney known for his ruthless tactics and unparalleled success rate. He rises from behind his desk, his hand outstretched in greeting. "Mrs. Callahan, a pleasure to meet you," he says, his voice smooth and confident. "I've heard great things about your work as a lawyer. It's a shame we're meeting under such unfortunate circumstances." I take his hand, my grip firm and unyielding. "Please, call me Evelyn, and thank you for agreeing to take on my case. I need someone who isn't afraid to play hardball." Liam smiles, a glint of something dangerous in his eyes. "I assure you, Evelyn, I'm not in the business of playing nice. When my clients come to me, they expect results, and I deliver." We sit and I slide the manila envelope across his desk. This is what my private investigator uncovered. Proof of my husband's infidelity and financial support of his mistress. Liam flips through the documents, his brow furrowed in concentration. "This is good, Evelyn. Very good. With this evidence, we can paint a picture of a man who not only betrayed his marriage vows, but also his financial responsibilities." I nod, my heart racing with the thrill of impending revenge. "There's more. I've uncovered evidence that Asher has been embezzling funds from our joint accounts, funneling the money into Natalie's bank account." Liam's eyes widen, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Embezzlement? Oh, this is going to be fun. We'll nail him to the wall, Evelyn. He won't know what hit him." We spend the next few hours poring over the evidence, strategizing our next moves. Liam is brilliant, his mind working in ways I never could have imagined. He sees angles I never considered, finds loopholes and technicalities that will work in our favor. As we work, I find myself drawn to him, to his intensity and his passion for justice. He understands the pain of betrayal, the anger that comes with being wronged by someone you trusted, and in that understanding I find a kindred spirit. You know, Evelyn, he says, leaning back in his chair, I've seen a lot of cases like yours over the years. Spouses who cheat, who lie, who think they can get away with anything. But you're different. You're a fighter. You're not going to let him win. I smile, feeling a warmth spread through my chest at his words. Damn right, I'm not. Asher thinks he can just walk away, start a new life with his mistress, and leave me to pick up the pieces. But he has no idea what's coming for him. Liam reaches across the desk, his hand covering mine. We'll make him pay, Evelyn. Together. He'll regret the day he ever thought he could betray you and get away with it. I look into his eyes, seeing the fire and determination that mirrors my own. In that moment, I know I've found more than just a lawyer. I've found a partner, someone who will stand by my side and fight for what's right. Let's do this, I say, my voice steady and strong. Let's take him down. Liam grins, a wicked gleam in his eye. With pleasure, Evelyn, with pleasure. As we continue to work, the hours ticking by in a blur of strategy and planning, I feel a sense of power coursing through my veins. Asher thought he could break me, thought he could shatter my world and leave me helpless. But he underestimated me. He underestimated the depths of my rage, the strength of my resolve. And now, with Liam by my side, I will make him pay for every lie, every betrayal, every moment of pain he has inflicted upon me. The price of his deception will be high, and I will collect every penny. I stand before Asher, my eyes blazing with the fury of 1,000 suns. In my hands, I clutch the evidence of his deceit. It's the proof of his betrayal. He looks at me, his face a mask of arrogance and disdain. What do you want, Evelyn? He sneers, his voice dripping with contempt. I thought I made myself clear. We're done. I'm starting a new life with Natalie. I laugh, a cold, mirthless sound that echoes through the room. Oh, you're done, all right, Asher, but not in the way you think. I toss the papers onto the table between us, watching as his eyes widen in recognition. You thought you could hide your lies, your embezzlement, your sordid little affair, but you were wrong. I have proof of everything, Asher, every penny you stole, every promise you broke. He reaches for the papers, his hands trembling. This is nonsense, Evelyn. You can't prove anything. Can't I? I smirk, reveling in his discomfort. I have bank statements, credit card receipts, emails, and text messages. I have a private investigator who has been tracking your every move, and I have a team of lawyers who are ready to take you down. Asher's face pales, his bravado crumbling before my eyes. What do you want, Evelyn? Money? The house? I'll give you whatever you want, just don't do this. I lean forward, my eyes locked on his. What I want, Asher, is justice. I want you to pay for what you've done, for the pain you've caused. I want you to suffer, just like I have suffered. He shakes his head, his voice desperate. Please, Evelyn, think about what you're doing. Think about our marriage, our life together. Our marriage? I scoff, my anger rising with each passing second. You destroyed our marriage the moment you decided to stick your dick in my best friend. You threw away our life together the moment you chose her over me. Asher's eyes narrow, his voice growing cold. You're making a mistake, Evelyn. If you go through with this, I'll make sure you regret it. I'll drag your name through the mud. I'll make sure everyone knows what a vindictive bitch you really are. I laugh, a sound full of bitter triumph. Go ahead, Asher. Do your worst. But know this, I have the truth on my side. I have the evidence of your lies and your betrayal. And I will use it to destroy you, just like you destroyed me. He stares at me, his eyes full of hatred and fear. You'll never win, Evelyn. I'll fight you every step of the way. I smile, a cold, cruel twist of my lips. Bring it on, Asher. I'm ready for war. With that, I turn and walk away, my head held high. I feel a sense of power coursing through my veins, a sense of purpose that I haven't felt in years. Asher thought he could break me, thought he could shatter my world and leave me helpless. But he was wrong. I am stronger than he ever imagined, and I will not rest until he has paid for his crimes. I will not rest until he has felt the full of my vengeance. As I step out into the bright sunlight, I feel a sense of hope blooming in my chest. I have a long road ahead of me, a battle that will test me in ways I never imagined. But I am ready. I am ready to fight, to claw my way back from the brink of despair and emerge victorious. Asher and Natalie may have started this war, but I will be the one to finish it. And when the dust settles, they will know the true price of their deception. The shrill ring of my phone pierces the silence of my apartment. I glance at the screen, my heart skipping a beat as I see Natalie's name flashing across the display. I hesitate for a moment, wondering what fresh hell she has in store for me, before answering with a curt, "What do you want?" "Evelyn, please," she sobs, her voice thick with tears. "I need your help. The baby, she's not Asher's." I feel a rush of vindictive pleasure at her words, a sense of poetic justice that leaves me breathless. Well, I purr, my voice dripping with malice. "It seems the tables have turned, haven't they, Natalie?" She's quiet for a moment, her sniffles the only sound on the line. "I know I don't deserve your help, Evelyn. I know what I did was unforgivable, but please, I have nowhere else to turn. Asher, he abandoned us. He said he wants nothing to do with me or the baby." I lean back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. "And why should I help you, Natalie? After everything you've done, after all the pain you've caused, why should I lift a finger to help you?" "Because I have information," she whispers, her voice trembling. "Information that could help you destroy Asher. I'll tell you everything, Evelyn. Every dirty secret, every lie he's ever told. Just please, help me. Help my baby." I'm silent for a long moment, weighing my options. On the one hand, the thought of helping Natalie, of showing her even an ounce of mercy, makes my stomach churn with disgust. But on the other hand, the promise of more ammunition against Asher, of more weapons to use in my war against him, is too tempting to resist. "Fine," I say, my voice cold and hard. "I'll help you, Natalie, but not for you, for your child, and in exchange you'll give me everything you have on Asher, every last scrap of dirt, every skeleton in his closet. Do we have a deal?" She's quiet for a moment, her breathing ragged. "Yes," she whispers, her voice barely audible. "We have a deal." I hang up the phone, my mind racing with the possibilities. With Natalie's testimony, with the evidence she can provide, I can bring Asher to his knees. I can make him pay for every moment of pain he's caused, every lie he's ever told. But first, I need to make sure Natalie holds up her end of the bargain. I need to make sure she's truly on my side, that she's not just using me for her own gain. I pick up the phone again, dialing Liam's number. He answers on the first ring, his voice warm and comforting. "Evelyn, what's up?" "Natalie called," I say, my voice steady and strong. "She wants my help. Says the baby isn't Asher's and he's abandoned them." Liam is quiet for a moment, his mind working through the implications. "This could be big, Evelyn. If Natalie's telling the truth, if she has evidence against Asher, it could be the final nail in his coffin." "I know," I say, my heart racing with the thrill of impending victory. "But I need to make sure she's not playing me. I need to make sure she's truly on our side." "Leave that to me," Liam says, his voice full of confidence. "I'll dig into her background, make sure she's not hiding anything, and if she is, we'll use it against her. We'll make sure she has no choice but to cooperate." I smile, feeling a rush of gratitude for Liam's unwavering support. "Thank you, Liam. I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'll never have to find out," he says, his voice soft and tender. "I'm here for you, Evelyn, always." As I hang up the phone, I feel a sense of hope blooming in my chest. With Natalie's testimony, with Liam by my side, I can finally bring Asher to justice. I can finally make him pay for every moment of pain he's caused. And when the dust settles, when the war is won, I will emerge victorious. I will emerge stronger, wiser, and more powerful than ever before. Liam and I sit side by side, poring over the evidence we've gathered against Asher. Bank statements, phone records, emails, and texts, all painting a picture of a man consumed by his own greed and selfishness. "This is good, Evelyn," Liam says, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "With Natalie's testimony and the evidence we've uncovered, we can bring Asher down. We can expose him for the fraud he really is." I nod, my heart racing with the thrill of impending victory. "I want to see him suffer, Liam. I want to see him lose everything, just like he made me lose everything." Liam takes my hand, his touch warm and comforting. We'll make sure he pays, Evelyn. We'll make sure he never hurts anyone else ever again. We work tirelessly, building our case against Asher. We reach out to his colleagues, his patients, anyone who might have information about his unethical behavior. And with each new piece of evidence, each new testimony, our case grows stronger. Finally, the day of reckoning arrives. We stand before the medical board, our evidence laid out in damning detail. Asher sits across from us, his face pale and drawn, his eyes filled with fear. Dr. Asher Callahan, the board chairman, begins, his voice grave. The evidence against you is overwhelming. You have violated the trust of your patients, your colleagues, and your profession. You have engaged in unethical behavior, financial misconduct, and adultery. What do you have to say for yourself? Asher opens his mouth to speak, but no words come out. He looks at me, his eyes pleading for mercy, but I have none to give. You destroyed my life, Asher, I say, my voice cold and hard. You betrayed me, lied to me, and made me question everything I ever believed in. And now, you will pay the price for your actions. The board deliberates for only a few minutes before reaching their decision. Dr. Asher Callahan, the chairman says, his voice ringing with finality. It is the decision of this board to revoke your medical license, effective immediately. You are hereby barred from practicing medicine in the state of New York, and your name will be added to the National Registry of Disciplined Physicians. May God have mercy on your soul. Asher crumples in his seat, his face buried in his hands. I feel a rush of triumph, a sense of vindication that leaves me breathless. I have won. I have destroyed the man who destroyed me. As we leave the hearing, Liam takes my hand, his eyes shining with pride. You did it, Evelyn. You brought him to justice. I nod, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. I couldn't have done it without you, Liam. You've been my rock through all of this. He smiles, his hand tightening around mine. I'll always be here for you, Evelyn, no matter what. We walk out into the bright sunlight, ready to face the world together. Natalie is waiting for us, her baby cradled in her arms. She looks at me, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Evelyn, she says, her voice trembling with emotion. Thank you for helping me, for giving me a second chance. I nod, feeling a sense of kinship with the woman who was once my enemy. We all deserve a second chance, Natalie, even you. As we walk away, I feel a sense of hope blooming in my chest. The past few months have been a nightmare, a hell I never thought I'd escape. But now, with Asher's downfall and Liam by my side, I know that anything is possible. I have emerged from the darkness, stronger and more powerful than ever before, and I know that whatever the future holds, I will face it with my head held high, ready to take on the world.